A Breath of French Air by H.E. Bates, read by David Jason. Little Oscar, Ma Larkin's seventh, lay in his lavish silvery pram in the kitchen, looking remarkably like a very soft, very large apple dumpling that has been slightly overboiled. Continual small bubbles of spittle oozed softly like pink juice from his lips, and Pop, coming in for breakfast after giving morning swill to the pigs, paused affectionately to wipe them off with a feeder worked all over in royal blue daisies and a bright scarlet picture of Miss Muffet, the big spider, and curds and whey. Ma, who looked, if anything, 6 inches wider since having the baby than she had done even while carrying it, had worked the feeder herself.
"Soon be as fat as a Christmas gander," Pop said.
He then gave his son-in-law, Mr. Charlton, his customary open-handed clout of greeting in the middle of the back. Mr. Charlton, who sat waiting for his breakfast, took the salutation without flinching. Nearly a year in the Larkin household had hardened him a lot. Ma, in bright purple blouse and pink apron, and with dark, rich hair still in curling pins, had 3 pounds of sausages in one frying pan, several rounds of fried bread and 7 or 8 rashers of bacon in another, and a basket of fresh pink field mushrooms waiting for a saucepan. Just before Pop bent to kiss her full on her handsome mouth and wish her good morning, she dropped half the mushrooms into the saucepan.
"Marriott not down?" Pop said. "Kids off to school? Going to be a beautiful day." "Perfect. Mushrooms smell good."
Outside it was raining in drilling summer torrents. Nothing could be seen of the far side of the junkyard, the woods and the surrounding meadows in the cloudy, steamy air. Nearer to the house, the only visible moving things were a few hens shaking damp brown feathers under the straw hovel, a line of 6 or 7 Chinese geese wandering dopily in and out of a wet jungle of rusty iron and nettles, and a small flock of sparrows, bathing with sprinkling wings in muddy pools of water. This was July, Ma thought. It was enough to give you the willies. It was a real thick 'un, what she sometimes called bad courting weather. Pop, irresistibly optimistic that the day was going to be a beautiful one, inquired again about his eldest daughter, Mariette. She was nearly always up with the lark, out riding or something, and he missed her when she didn't come down. It wasn't like her. "Not feeling all that good," Ma said. "Bit peaky." Pop pricked up his ears sharply. Not good. He wondered what it could be. Morning sickness, perhaps. He hoped so. "She needs a change," Ma said. "Ought to have a holiday. Weather's getting her down."
"Well, soon clear up," Pop said. "You'll see. Be perfect by midday. Beautiful."
"Don't you believe it," Ma said. "It's one of them Julys. I've seen them before. They never get right. By the time you get into August, it's like they have in India. What do they call, Charlie, them things?" "Monsoons," Mr. Charlton said. Sausages hit the frying pan with a sound of red-hot irons plunging into freezing water, and immediately little Oscar began to cry. Pop rushed at once to pick him up, but Ma said breakfast was ready, and began to serve the first of the bacon, the sausages, the fried bread, and the mushrooms to Mr. Charlton, who was deep in the Times.
"I know what he wants," Pop said. "He wants his morning Guinness."
"Well, he'll have to wait for his Guinness, that's all," Ma said, "like other folks do." Mr. Charlton, who had heard nothing of this conversation, folded the Times into quarter-page size, then suddenly said that that was a most extraordinary thing. "What's extraordinary?" Ma said. "This picture," Mr. Charlton said. "It's a picture of a little place called Saint-Pierre-le-Port. I used to go and spend every summer holiday there when I was a boy. My aunt and uncle used to take me." "Oh, let's have a look," Ma said. "Yes, this is the actual view I used to see from my bedroom window." "Seaside?" "On the Atlantic. The sea goes out for miles at low tide, and you can paddle on lovely warm sand, and there's a funny little train comes from somewhere inland and goes trundling from place to place along the coast. I loved that little train. That train is France for me." Pop, open-mouthed, stopped biting sausage and looked completely startled at the word France.
France? You went abroad, he said. For your holidays? Didn't your pop and ma want you?
Oh, I lost them both when I was 6, Mr. Charlton said. I think I told you. Pop, still submerged in disbelief at the astonishing course of the conversation, now became aware of another remarkable thing. Ma was not eating breakfast.
Ma, you're not having anything, he said. What's up?
Not very peckish, Ma said. I think I'll give Oscar his first. Perhaps I'll feel better after that.
I hope so. God, terrible. What's up with everybody? Everyone looks pale round the gills.
Ma went over to the pram and picked up little Oscar, who belched sharply. She kissed him softly in the nape of his neck and sat down again at the table. Then she proceeded to extract from her blouse a large expanse of olive bosom, twice as large as a full-ripe melon. Into this mass of tender flesh, Oscar buried his face.
Was it healthy?
Pop said. France? Mr. Charlton said. Oh, very. The air's wonderful there in Brittany. All hot and sultry and marvellous food. Oh, wonderful food. Did you say hot? Ma said. Well, some summers we'd never see a drop of rain. And the sea, I always remember how blue the sea was. Vivid. I should like to feel it hot again, Ma said. Like last year. I haven't felt the sun hot on my chest since that day you and Mariette were married in September. Oh, a very lovely day that had been, Pop recalled. All light and hot sunshine, with a big marquee in the garden and plenty of iced port, cold salmon and champagne. He would remember forever Mariette's dress of yellow silk, so suited to her dark hair, and her bouquet of stephanotis and cherry-red nerine that appeared to have gold dust sprinkled all over their petals. Everybody was there that day, and Mariette's sisters, Zinnia, Petunia, Victoria and Primrose, were bridesmaids, each in deep cream, with headdresses of small golden roses and posies of lily of the valley. Ma, like Miss Pilchester and several of their friends, wept openly, and even Pop had a tear in his eye. It was less than a week after Mariette and Charlie were back from honeymoon when Pop began to inquire of Ma if anything was happening yet. Ma said she should think not. Everybody wasn't like him. You've only got to start eyeing me across a 40-acre field, she said, and I start wondering whether I'm going to have twins or triplets. You've got to give them a chance, she went on. And Pop could only reply that he thought a fortnight was plenty of chance. He murmured something about the question of Charlie's technique, of which, in view of his great shyness before marriage, Ma had entertained considerable doubts, but Ma replied blandly that she thought that if there was anything Charlie didn't know by this time, Mariette would soon teach him. Ever since that time, Pop had been fired with the hope that Ma would soon have some interesting news to tell him. But nothing happened, and now at last Pop had begun to have considerable doubts about Charlie's desire or even ability to make him a grandfather. "Got your watch on, Charlie?" Ma said. "How long's he had on this side?" Mr. Charlton looked briefly up from reading the Times and said he thought it was about 10 minutes. Deftly, Ma released Oscar from her bosom. There was a rich, milky plop as Oscar let go the cork of her nipple, and then a sudden complaining wail of hunger as she slipped her breast back into her blouse. "Oh, let me get the door open, for goodness sake, child," Ma said.
"Never known anybody like him for his Guinness," Pop said.
A moment later, Oscar was buried again in rosy flesh, all contentment, while Ma held him close to her with one hand, trying at the same time to pour herself a cup of tea with the other. Mr. Charlton was quick to see her difficulties and got up at once to pour it for her. That was one of the things Ma liked about Charlie. Nice manners. After Charlie had poured the tea, she took 2 or 3 sips slowly and then made a sudden pronouncement. "I should like to go to France," she said.
"God almighty," Pop said. "What for?"
"For a holiday, of course," Ma said. "I think it would do us all good to get some sun." Mr. Charlton let out a positive crow of delight. "Oh, heavens! That would be marvellous," he said. "Oh, that little train again. the beach, that warm sea, those little sweet grapes and peaches. Oh, that food! He was suddenly overcome with an emotional desire to strike Pop in the back, and actually did so. Its effect on Pop was to stun him into deeper, more confused silence than ever. "Come unto these yellow sands, and then take hands," Charlie started quoting, at the same time getting up from the breakfast table. "I've simply got to tell Mariette." Oscar had taken another 5 minutes of his mother when Ma pulled her nipple away from him with another gentle plop and turned him over to lie against her shoulder. The result of this was a series of sudden belches, each richer, louder, and milkier than the first. Ma said that was better, and it must be the gin she'd had last night. Instinctively, Oscar renewed his nuzzling for the breast. Ma said she might just as well turn herself into a 4-ale bar and be done with it, and gave a sudden deep sigh that had in it a certain note of weariness and even despair. Pop said, "Ma, don't you really feel well? Tell me, me old duck." In reply, Ma could only ask him how he would feel if someone had played football inside him for 9 months. But it was a question for which Pop could think of no sensible answer, and he was both glad and relieved to hear Mariette and Charlie coming downstairs. "As well as turning yourself into a bar 3 or 4 times a day, somehow I think I'm getting too old for this lark." Ma, he thought, had never talked like this before. Damn it, she was only 36. "The trouble is, this one's like you," Ma said, "never satisfied." A moment later, Mariette came in, her dark hair still loose from sleep, wearing a green silk dressing gown and crimson slippers. In a new state of excitement, she ran straight to Pop, who had a mouthful of sausage, mushroom and mustard, and started kissing him. "France," she said. "I've always wanted to go to France. When do we start? Do we all go?"
Who said we were going to France?
"You did. Charlie did." She turned excitedly to Ma, at the same time kissing Oscar on the back of his neck. "You want to go to France, don't you, Ma?" "Oh, that's what I just told Pop." "There you are. Everybody wants to go. Oh, for that sun." Mariette rolled her handsome body to and fro under its dressing gown, her breasts rising in voluptuous expectation. "I can't wait for that sun. It's amazing what the sun can do for you." Pop listened with keen alertness. Perhaps it was, after all, the sun that she and Charlie had been missing. "Ah, the heat of the sun," Charlie said. "Fear no more the heat of the sun."
Off again, Pop thought. "Is it right to eat frogs?" he said.
"Of course," Charlie said, "and absolutely delicious they are too."
"Good God."
"Oh, just the legs," Charlie said. "They're exactly like chicken."
Involuntary, Pop burst out laughing in his customary ringing fashion. "Oh, hear that, Ma, frogs? Just like chicken."
"They eat snails too," Ma said, "don't they?" "Certainly. Escargot de Bourgogne. Wonderful." Pop sat stunned over the breakfast table, open-mouthed at the sound of a new, strange language coming from Charlie's lips. "That was French," Mariette said. "Did you know Charlie speaks French?" Ma said she was greatly relieved. "That was the only thing that was worrying me," she said, "how we'd make ourselves understood." "He's going to teach me," Mariette said. "Why don't we all learn?" "Why not?" Charlie said. "I could teach you all a few simple phrases." Pop was speechless. Charlie boy speaking French, Charlie boy quoting poetry and Shakespeare and spending holidays abroad. There was no end to the surprises of his son-in-law. Pensively, Pop helped himself to marmalade and made a tentative suggestion that Charlie boy should give him an example of 1 or 2 of these simple phrases. "Certainly," Charlie said. Bonjour, comment ça va, Monsieur Larkin?"
"Eh?"
Pop said. Ma sat in silent admiration, bemusedly rocking little Oscar backwards and forwards at her bosom. Pop said,
"And what the pipe does that all mean?"
Good morning, how goes it, how are you?" Ma started laughing and said that she could never get her tongue round that lot.
"Nor me neither,"
Pop said. "Oh, it's simple, it's easy," Charlie said. "Just say it."
"Well, me?"
Pop said. "Yes, go on. Just repeat it. Bonjour, comment ça va? Or comment allez-vous, if you like, same thing."
"Well, no, one thing at a time, Pop said. Bonjour. Is that it?
Splendid. Bonjour. Comment ça va?
Bonjour. Comment ça va? Pop said, grinning. Hey, any good?
Marvellous, you have a jolly fine accent in no time.
Pop, feeling suddenly proud, started preening himself. Having French lessons now, Ma, eh? What price that?
Ma looked at Pop in gleaming admiration. Always quick to learn, Ma said. Sharp as a packet of needles. No flies on Pop. Pop, increasingly thirsty for knowledge, preened himself again and said, "What about some more examples, Charlie boy?" Au revoir, Charlie said. À bientôt.
Oh, what's that mean?
Goodbye, see you soon.
Au revoir, à bientôt, Pop said swiftly. Easy.
Mariette actually applauded, so that suddenly there was no holding Pop, who got up smartly from the breakfast table, bowed to Ma and said, "Bonjour, madame. Comment ça va? Au revoir, à bientôt." "Jolly fine," Charlie said.
"Can you see us over there, Ma?" Pop said. "Eating frogs, legs and snails, and me talking froggy."
"Oh, I can't wait," Mariette said, and again her body went through its voluptuous rolling under the dressing gown. "I just can't wait. I'll just lie all day in the sun in a bikini."
"That's what I'd like to take too," Ma said. "A bikini. Bit of sun would firm me up."
The prospect of Ma being firmed up in a bikini fired Pop so madly that he shouted at Charlie,
"All right, Charlie boy, then. When do we start?"
"Well, the children will be going on holiday in August. That's if we're all going." "Of course we're all going," Ma said. "All right, then. I suggest the 3rd week in August. That'll avoid the French national holiday, which is on the 15th. Charlie boy again, knowing everything.
Full marks for Charlie. "Perfect," Pop said. "À bientôt."
Mr. Charlton marvelled once more how swiftly, fluently and excellently Pop had acquired himself an accent.
"How do we get there?" Pop said. "Swim?"
"Well, I suggest we take the rolls, if it's all right with you."
"Good God," Pop said. "Hey, I never thought of that."
"They won't overcharge us, will they?" Ma said, "if they see the rolls." "I'll get the hotel, the Beau Rivage, to quote everything first," Charlie said. "Taxis, service, everything. I think Mr. Dupont will be fair. Well, that's if he's still there. But in France, it's always as well to fix everything beforehand." Great fixer, Charlie. Marvellous fellow for figures, discounts, bills and all that. In the last 6 months, Pop had left him to deal with all the paperwork, forms, returns and what Pop called the dodgy stuff. Oh, great help, Charlie. Pop, in fact, was more than pleased that Charlie, after marrying Mariette, had had sense enough to throw up his job at the tax inspector's office to take up more respectable, more sensible employment. It was worse than awful to think of having anybody in the family connected with tax lark. Wouldn't do at all. Worse than having somebody who'd been doing time. In recognition of Charlie's sensible behaviour, Pop had given him and Mariette 500 laying pullets. That had set them up in the egg lark. It had paid pretty well on the whole, the egg lark, except that Charlie would insist on making proper income tax returns about it all, which was a very bad habit to get into, Pop considered, whichever way you look at it. There was no doubt about the change from taxes to eggs suiting Charlie all right. He looked in every way a fit, virile young man. All the more puzzling, Pop thought, that he didn't seem to be able to translate it at all into the proper channels. Married nearly a year, no children. That was really a bit dodgy. "Of course," Charlie said. "There's the problem of passports." "Problem?" Mariette said. "What problem?" With as much tact as he could muster, Mr. Charlton reminded them all of the delicate and rather difficult situation concerning Pop and Ma. "Perhaps it would have been better if you'd got married after all," he said.
"Well, I suppose we still could," Pop said, but not with apparent enthusiasm. It was a bit of a palaver.
Mr. Charlton said he supposed the solution was that all the children could go on Pop's passport, leaving Ma to take hers out in her maiden name. Placidly, Ma fondled the head of her 7th child against her large cheek, not unduly concerned. "Well, I suppose if everybody had their rights," she said, "I'm still Flo Parker." "Leave it to Charlie," Mariette said. "He'll arrange everything." Ma had now finished giving little Oscar his breakfast and was putting him back into his pram. Pop was at the door, suddenly remembering there was work to do.
Must go. Got to go and see Joe Rawlins about a straw deal at 9:30.
He permitted himself the luxury of a bow.
Au revoir. See you, bientôt.
Au revoir, Mr. Charlton and Mariette said together, laughing, and bientôt, adieu. At the same time, little Oscar made a series of noises, compounded of wind, slobber and his mother's milk, so that Ma said if they weren't all careful, they'd have him at it too. When Pop drew the rolls up outside the Hotel Beau Rivage at 6:30 in the evening of the last day of August, a gale was raging in the Atlantic that made even the sturdy blue fishing boats in the most sheltered corners of the little port look like battered wreckage of half-drowned matchstalks. Dancing arches of white spray ran up and down the grey quay walls like raging dinosaurs 40 feet high. Rain and spray beat at the windows of the little hotel, crashing pebbles on the shutterboards. A wind as cold as winter ran ceaselessly round the harbour with unbroken shriekings.
For crying out gently, Charlie, Pop said. Where the pipe have we come to, Lapland?
Mr. Charlton stared silently at the Beau Rivage. The hotel seemed altogether so much smaller, so much shabbier, so much more dilapidated than he'd remembered it. It looked dismal, dark and poky. Style of creosoted Tudor looked incredibly flimsy and insecure, and now and then the blistered brown shutters sprang violently on their hooks and seemed, like the rest of the hotel, ready to collapse. "Well, I suppose we ought to go in," he said at last. And he led the way, hastily followed by Ma, carrying little Oscar, then Primrose and Montgomery, submerged under one raincoat, the twins, Victoria and Mariette under one umbrella, and finally Pop carrying 2 suitcases and a zip canvas bag. Pop was wearing thin blue linen trousers, a yellow sleeveless shirt, yellow canvas shoes, and a yachting cap, in anticipation of a long spell of French hot weather. In the vestibule of the hotel, he was at once assailed by a powerful smell of linseed oil, drain pipes, French cigarettes, and leaking gas. One single electric bulb burned above the reception desk in the gloom of early evening, and this was flickering madly. Pop was more than glad to observe that Charlie was already in charge of things at the reception desk. Charlie, even if he didn't feel it, looked calm, self-possessed, even authoritative. He was speaking in French. Pop liked it when Charlie spoke in French. "Est-ce le passeport, monsieur?" Behind the reception desk, a small, bald man in pince-nez with grey, hungry cheeks and brown, mole-like eyes spoke to Mr. Charlton in a voice of schoolmasterly irritation, as if hoping to catch him out. But Mr. Charlton had everything weighed up. Swiftly the passports were on the desk, Mr. and Mrs. Charlton's, Pop's, with the 6 children included on it, and Ma's in her maiden name of Flo Parker. "Qu'est-ce que vous avez comme bagage?" The man in pince-nez struck a large desk bell, such a resonant blow that little Oscar began weeping. Ma, sitting reposedly in one of the several decrepit basket chairs, at once decided that the best way of meeting the situation was to give him a little refreshment. A few moments later, an elderly concierge in gumboots, sou'westers, and a plastic mackintosh arrived from dark regions somewhere behind the reception desk in time to see little Oscar bury his face in the contented continent of Ma. Pop then remembered that there was a good deal of baggage in the car, and he followed the concierge into the driving, howling August rain. Coming back, both shoes full of water, he saw Charlie in process of being lectured, as it seemed, by the man in pince-nez. "What's up?" Pop called. He said he wasn't aware that one of the children was so small. "Tell him we've only just had him," Ma said. "I'm trying to fatten him up as fast as I can." The man in pince-nez seemed unimpressed by this and began to snatch various huge brass-lobed keys from their hooks. "And tell him we want a cup of tea," Ma said. With mounting impatience, the man in the pince-nez crashed the keys back on their hooks. He directed a stream of complaint at Mr. Charlton. "He says—" "Don't he speak English?" Ma said. "I bet he does, or else he wouldn't have understood what I said just now." "Speak English, don't you?" "Oui, madame." "Yes." "All right, then. Well, why don't you speak it instead of standing there talking in a foreign language?" "Oui, madame." All we want is a nice cup of tea, quick. If you can't make it, I soon will. But in 20 minutes, you may have dinner, madame. I dare say, that's not tea, is it? Combien de amenities, madame? Everybody, Ma said, all 10 of us. The man in pince-nez stared at little Oscar, busily engaged in taking refreshment. Even the baby, madame? Oh, he'll have gin, Ma said. He likes it better. The man in pince-nez walked out, at the same time calling to the concierge. 17, 19, 24, 28. As if these orders were for prisoners going to an execution. Pop stood looking at his new canvas shoes. They were full of water. Water was coursing down his backbone, through his trousers and out of his shirt and socks. Like a nice glass of hot port, he said, with cloves and cinnamon, like I rigged up last Christmas. Ma was hungry. She said so in a loud voice, and Mr. Charlton thought it a good moment to draw her attention to various framed certificates, diplomas and illustrated addresses hanging about the walls. So much evidence of the excellent, even high-classed cuisine of the Beau Rivage. See, Ma? Pop said. Cooking prizes. Anything for this year? Ma said. Mr. Charlton was saved the necessity of finding an answer to this pertinent question by the arrival of the tea in a huge white metal coffee pot with thick white coffee cups to drink it from, and the bill on the tray. While Mariette sugared and milked the cups, Pop, moving like a deep-sea diver who has only just surfaced, dripping water from every thread, picked up the bill and gazed at it. How much is 2,350 francs, Charlie boy? At this moment, Victoria started crying. Oh, you take her, Mariette, Ma said. You know how she is. Whispering conciliatory noises, Mariette took Victoria out. Mr. Charlton said, Oh, about £2, just over. For tea? Ma yelled. Her bosom seemed to rise into the air like an affronted puffball. Oh, I thought you said it was cheap, Pop said. Here, Ma said. Hold Oscar. Mr. Charlton found himself suddenly holding Oscar. Oscar, like Pop, was wet. Ma hastily covered up her bosom and bore down on tea and teacups. And hot milk, she said. Feel this. They brought hot milk. No one had any time to comment on this outrage before Mariette and Victoria came back, Mariette tightly holding her sister's hand. Hot milk, Mariette, Ma said. £2 and over for a cup of tea, and they bring hot milk. Hello, what's the matter with you? Mariette looked white and shaken. Looks as if you've seen a ghost or something. Looks as if you've had the bill, not Pop. Mariette's lip was trembling. She was taking long and hard breaths. Whatever's the matter? Ma said. I'd rather not talk about it. It's just something out there. You can't sit down, Victoria said. You have to stand up. Good God, Ma said. Think of me. There was nothing for it but to give Mariette the strongest cup of tea she could pour out. This was several shades paler than straw and looked and tasted like discoloured water flavoured ever so faintly with boiled onions. After that, Ma swished the teapot powerfully round and round in an effort to bring strength where it was most needed, saying at the same time, It'll be mice next. I know. I smelt 'em when we came in. As if in answer to an outrageous signal, the man in pince-nez appeared out of a door marked Bureau, after the manner of a hungry, burrowing mole, busied himself for some moments behind the desk, sniffing and rattling keys, and then asked Mr. Charlton if he'd yet filled up the forms. Mr. Charlton had not filled up forms. There were 10 of them. He now gave Oscar to Montgomery and took out his fountain pen. Ask him if there's a bar, Pop said. Mr. Charlton looked up and asked the man in the pince-nez if there was a bar. Oui, monsieur, par ici. With one thin finger, he indicated that the bar lay somewhere in the regions beyond the bureau, in the direction where Mariette and Victoria had found life so inconvenient for their sex. Good egg, Pop said. I'll buzz round and have a snifter. Not on your Nelly, Ma said. Take hold of Oscar. I expect he wants changing. That's why he's roaring again. The concierge came back, and the man in pince-nez spoke suddenly in French. Mr. Charlton translated. He says you can go up to your rooms now if you want to. The concierge picked up the remainder of the baggage and the children their things. Mr. Charlton said he'd come up soon, since the forms would take him at least another 20 minutes to finish. "My belly's rattling," Petunia said. Zinnia said hers was too, and they couldn't stand it much longer. "Well, we won't bother to unpack," Ma said. "I'll just change Oscar and wash, and then we'll all come down." Everybody was ready to go upstairs except Mr. Charlton when a stupendous crash of thunder occurred. The light went completely out, came on, went out, came on, and repeated the process 6 more times before going out altogether. In the comparative silence after the thunder, a strange new sound crept into the air. It was that of one of the wicker chairs squeaking, like a horde of mice in protest.
"Here, hold Oscar, somebody," Pop said. "Ma's stuck."
Mariette took Oscar. Pop went over to Ma, solicitous but unsurprised. It had happened before. Ma had always had difficulty in getting her 2-yard bulk into the confines of strange furniture, and still more difficulty in getting it out again.
"Give us a hand, Charlie," Pop said, "before she goes under for the 3rd time."
Pop and Charlie started to pull at Ma, who began to laugh with huge, jellified ripples. The man in pince-nez looked on with frigid, withdrawn, offended eyes. Pop and Charlie pulled at Ma harder than ever, but with no results except to set her laughing with louder shrieks more fatly. The light came on again, illuminating Ma as a collapsing balloon that would never rise. Her whole body started to sink lower and lower, and suddenly Pop realised that even if she survived, the chair never would. Another peal of thunder rent the air above the hotel. The man in the pince-nez pleaded, "La chaise, madame! Je vous prie, la chaise!" And for the 9th or 10th time, the light went out. When it came on again, Ma was on her feet. Behind her, the chair was flatter than a doormat, and the man in the pince-nez had his head in his hands. "Madame, madame, je vous," he was saying. In distress, the necessary language for the occasion did not come to him for some moments. When it did so, his English was sadly broken up. "Madame, please, you could... Oh, madame, I ask... please." Pop strode over and struck the desk a severe blow with his fist, speaking peremptorily with a voluble rapidity.
"Qu'est-ce qu'il y a?" he shouted. "And comment ça va? Comment allez-vous? And avez-vous bien dormi? And qu'est-ce que vous avez mangé? And bientôt Saint-Marianne and all that lark."
The little man looked as if he'd been hit with a poleaxe. His mouth fell open sharply, but except for a muted gurgle, he could say nothing. A moment later, Pop and Ma started to go upstairs, followed by the children, Ma still laughing, Pop glad in his heart of the excellent tuition given by Charlie in various French phrases likely to be of use in an emergency. At the foot of the stairs he paused to turn with pride and perkiness to look back.
"Action all right, Charlie boy?"
"Perfect," Mr. Charlton said. "Absolutely perfect." Nearly an hour later, Pop was sitting in a corner of the dining room, a dining room of varnished, ginger-coloured matchboard and glass, built like a greenhouse shrouded with yellowing lace curtains against the westward side of the hotel. Some squares of glass were coloured blue or ruby. A few, broken altogether, had been patched up with squares of treacle-brown paper, and it seemed generally that the whole ramshackle structure, battered by the Atlantic storm, might at any moment fall down, disintegrate, and blow away. In the dining room, a noisy, eager battle was being waged by 7 or 8 French families against the howl of the wind and the rain, the tossing lace curtains, and more particularly against what appeared to be dishes of large, unpleasant pink spiders. In reality, langoustine. A mad cracking of claws filled the air, and one plump Frenchman sat eating, wearing his cap, a large white one, as if for protection against something, perhaps flying claws or bread or rain. 3 feet from Pop's table, a harassed French waitress with a marked limp and loose peroxide hair came to operate every desperate 2 minutes or so a large, patent, wooden-handled bread slicer about the size of an old-fashioned sewing machine, a cross somewhere between a guillotine and a chaff cutter. This instrument made groaning noises like an old tram trying to start. Slices of bread, savagely chopped from yard-long loaves, flew about in all directions. Harassed waiters and waitresses bore them hurriedly off to eager waiting guests. These, Pop noticed, at once crammed them ravenously into their mouths and even mopped their plates with them. Presently the rest of the family arrived. Mariette, immaculate and perfumed in a beautiful sleeveless low-cut dress of emerald green that made her shoulders and upper breasts glow a warm olive colour. Ma, in a mauve woolen dress and a royal blue jumper on top to keep out the cold. The French, Charlie had once told Pop, were the elite of Europe. Now they stopped ramming bread into their mouths like famished prisoners and gaped at the bare astral shoulders of Mariette, Ma's great mauve and blue balloon of a body, and the retinue of children behind it. Most of the older French women, Pop thought, seemed to be wearing discoloured woolen sacks. The younger ones, who were nearly all tallow-coloured, bruise-eyed and flat-chested, wore jeans. It was hard to tell any of them from boys, and in consequence Pop felt more than usually proud of Mariette, who looked so fleshily, elegantly and provocatively a girl. Presently the waitress with the limp brought the menu.
Well, what's to eat then, Charlie boy?
Pop said, rubbing his hands.
Something good, I hope, old man. I'm starving. By the way, what's eat in French? Haven't learned any words today.
It was Pop's honest resolve to learn, if possible, a few new French words every day. Manger, Charlie said. Same word as the thing in the stable, manger. Pop sat back and prepared to listen to Charlie's reading out of the menu with the awe he deserved. Well, to begin with, there are langoustines. They're a kind of small lobster. Then there's saucisson à la mode d'ici. That's a sort of sausage they do here, spécialité de la maison, I shouldn't wonder. Hot, I expect, probably awfully good. Then pigeon à la gautière. I expect that's pigeons in some sort of wine sauce. And afterwards, fruit and cheese.
Oh, sounds jolly bomb,
Pop said. What shall we drink, Charlie said.
Port,
Pop said. I doubt if they'll have port.
Good God. What? I thought you said the froggies lived on wine.
Well, they do, but it's their own. Port isn't. I suggest we drink Vin Rosé. That'll go well with the fish and the pigeon. The waitress with the limp, freed momentarily from the bread cutting, arrived a moment later to tell Charlie in French that there were, after all, no langoustines. Oh, sorry, no langoustines, Mr. Charlton said. They've got friture instead.
What's friture?
Fried sardines. Ma choked. Oh, fresh ones, of course, Charlie said. Probably caught this afternoon.
What, in that lot?
Pop said, and waved a disbelieving hand in the general direction of the howling, blackening gale that threatened to blow away the dining room. A long black burst of thunder struck the hotel when the friture arrived. They're tiddlers, the twins said. They're only tiddlers. Sardines never grow any bigger, Charlie said. Otherwise they wouldn't be sardines. Pop found himself facing a large plateful of shriveled, dark brown objects which immediately fell to pieces at the touch of a fork. Scorched fragments of fish flew flakily about in all directions. The few crumbs that he was able to capture, impaled on his fork and at last transferred to his mouth, tasted, he thought, exactly like the unwanted scraps left over at the bottom of a bag of fish and chips. Shan't get very fat on these, Ma said. Pop agreed. Ma's great bulk, which filled half one side of the table, now and then quivered in irritation, and presently she was eating the friture with her fingers, urging the children to do likewise. The children, in silent despair, ate bread. Savagely, the guillotine bread cutter worked overtime, drowning conversation, and presently the limping waitress brought the Vin Rosé, which Charlie tasted. Delicious, he said with mounting enthusiasm. Quite delicious. Ma drank too and felt a quick, sharp stream of ice descend to her bowels, cold as charity. At last the multitudinous remains of the friture were taken away, plates piled high with brown wreckage, and Ma said it looked like the feeding of the 5,000. Pop drank deep of the Vin Rosé, raised his glass to everybody, and, unable to think of very much to say, remarked mournfully,
Well, cheers, everybody. Well, here we are.
Certainly are, Ma said. Never spoke a truer word. After a short interval, the saucisson à la mode ici arrived. This consisted of a strange object looking like a large pregnant sausage roll scorched on top. Puffs of steam seemed to be issuing from the exhausts at either end. Ma remarked that at least it was hot, and Pop, appetite now whetted to the full by another sharp draught or two of vin rosé, prepared to attack his one by cutting it directly through the middle. To his dismay, the force of the cut, meeting hard resistance from the surface of scorched crust, sent the two pieces hurtling into the air. Both fell with a low thud to the floor. "Don't touch it! Don't touch it!" Ma said. "Mice everywhere!" I'll order another," Charlie said. Mademoiselle? Drinking more vin rosé to fortify himself, Pop waited while Charlie explained to the waitress the situation about the unfortunate disappearance of his second course. The waitress seemed unimpressed. She simply uttered the single word, "Supplément." "Oh, she says if you have another, you'll have to pay extra," Charlie said.
"Better order another bottle of vin rosé instead, Charlie," Pop said.
Weakly, he started to eat more bread. He had, he thought, never eaten so much bread in his life. He no longer wondered why the guillotine worked overtime. Suddenly, thunder roared again, faintly echoed by the rumblings of his own belly, and presently the little man in pince-nez appeared, making his furtive, mole-like way from table to table. When he saw the Larkins, he bowed. Mr. Charlton bowed too. "Nice to see that," Mr. Charlton said. "Typical French. He's come to see if everything's all right." "What do we have next?" Twins said. "What do we have next?"
"Pigeons," Pop said.
The thought of stewed pigeon made his mouth water. In wine sauce, too.
"Pigeons."
"We want baked beans on toast," Twins said. And cocoa."
"Quiet," Pop thundered. "I'll have order."
A moment later, a waitress, arriving with a fourth plate of bread, proceeded to announce to Mr. Charlton a fresh and disturbing piece of news. There were, after all, no pigeons. Pop felt too weak to utter any kind of exclamation about this second, deeper disappointment. "There's, rabbit," Charlie told him instead. Instantly, Pop recoiled in pale, fastidious horror.
"Not after Mixo," he said. "No, Charlie, I couldn't touch him after Mixo."
Myxomatosis, the scourge of the rabbit tribe, had affected Pop very deeply.
"It started here in France too. The froggies were the ones who had it first."
"Have an omelette," Charlie said cheerfully. Ma said they always give him heartburn. Pop could only murmur in a low, dispassionate voice that he'd had to have something, somehow, soon. "A steak, then," Charlie said, "with chips." At this, Pop cheered up a little, saying that a steak would suit him. "Alors, un filet beefsteak per monsieur," Charlie said, "avec pommes frites." "Beefsteak, beefsteak!" The twins started shouting, punching each other, laughing loudly. "Beefsteak, beefsteak, you, beefsteak!" From a distance, the man in the pince-nez stared in disapproval at the scene, so that Ma said, "Shh, Mr. Dupont's looking." "That isn't Mr. Dupont," Charlie said. "He's only the manager. Mr. Dupont's dead." "Die of overeating," Ma said. Pop laughed faintly. "The hotel is run by a Miss Dupont, Mademoiselle Dupont," Charlie explained. "But it seems she's away in Brest for the day." Pop drank deeply of the vin rosé.
"Better order some more of the juice, Charlie, old man. Got to keep going somehow."
"Beefsteak, beefsteak, beefsteak, beefsteak."
"Quiet,"
Pop said sharply, and from across the dining room several French mamas looked quickly round at him with full, sudden glances, clearly electrified. Half an hour later, he had masticated his way through a bloody piece of beef, roughly the shape of a boot sole, the same thickness, and about as interesting. He ate the chips that accompanied it down to the last frizzled crumb, and even dipped his bread in the half-cold blood.
"Don't even have any ketchup,"
he said, as if this serious gastronomic omission were the final straw. Soon the twins, Primrose, Victoria and Montgomery, went up to bed, and presently Pop began to throw out broad hints that Mariette and Charlie ought to do likewise. Mr. Charlton evidently didn't think so. "I'd rather like some coffee." "Me too," Mariette said. "Well, I expect we can get it in the lounge," Mr. Charlton said. In the lounge, in flickering semi-darkness, various French couples were drinking coffee, talking and playing whist, 21, and things of that sort. While waiting for the coffee, which Mr. Charlton ordered, Ma sat wondering what on earth she and the rest of the family were going to do with themselves for a month. It was Pop who had suggested coming for a month. It would give Mariette and Charlie more of a chance, he thought. Presently the coffee arrived in 4 patent filters, once silvered but now worn very brassy at the edges. The top half of the filter was full of water and the lid was too hot to hold.
What the hell do we do with these?
Pop said. The coffee should come through, Mr. Charlton said. If not, you strike it. The filter, I mean. 5 minutes later, everyone looked inside the filters and found that the water level hadn't dropped a centimetre. This was often the way, Mr. Charlton assured them, and went on to explain that the trouble could often be cured by pressure. Like this, he said, and he pressed the top of the filter firmly with the palm of his hand. That ought to do the trick. Pop wondered. Whenever he pressed the filter, the top of it scalded his hand. And there was never any sign of coffee coming through either. They vary, Mr. Charlton explained. Mine's coming through quite happily. After another 5 minutes, both Ma and Mariette said theirs was coming through quite nicely too. Pop peered several times at the unchanged water level in his own with a gloom unbroken except by the arrival of a cognac thoughtfully ordered by Charlie. The cognac was, by Pop's standard, a mere thimbleful, but it was better than nothing at all. No luck, Mr. Charlton said. Pop peered for the 9th or 10th time in the top of the filter to discover once more that the water level hadn't varied a bit. Better give it a tap, Mr. Charlton suggested. Pop proceeded to strike the lid of the filter, a sudden almighty blow such as he'd seen several of the French couples do. The lid at once went leaping vertically into the air, and Pop, in an involuntary effort to save it, knocked the bottom of the filter flying, spilling hot water, closely followed by coffee grounds and the cognac, into the upper parts of his trousers.
Ma, I think we'd better go up. I don't know whether I can last out much longer.
It wasn't his lucky day, he said, as he and Ma went into the bedroom, but Ma instantly and peremptorily shushed him, urging him to be careful not to wake little Oscar. I'm just going along to the bathroom, she said. Don't put the light on. You can see to get undressed without it.
No, can't see a damn thing, Pop said.
And you must feel, Ma said. Pop was still feeling when 3 or 4 minutes later Ma came back. He got as far as taking off his jacket, collar and tie, but had decided to go no further until he'd got some further guidance from Ma.
Where is it?
He said. Along the corridor and turn left and then down 3 steps. Mind the steps, light isn't very good. The light certainly wasn't very good, and in fact suddenly went out altogether under a fresh clap of thunder, leaving Pop groping helplessly along the unfamiliar walls of the corridor. He finally decided to feel his way back. He found himself unsure about the bedroom door, but fortunately little Oscar turned and murmured in his sleep, and Pop, pushing open the door, said,
Where are you, Ma?
Undressed yet? Ma said she wasn't undressing that night. It was too risky. She was sleeping in her dressing gown. Did you find it? Ma said. No, Pop said. He hadn't found it. That was the trouble. Oh, well, you better try the window, Ma said. Pop managed to find a window. With some difficulty he opened it, and then stood there for some time in concentrated silence, except for an occasional earnest sigh or two, facing the Atlantic, its wind and its rain. At last Ma called, All right. A long time. What's happening? Pop murmured something about he was having a bit of a battle with the elements. Are you winning or losing?
I think it's a draw, Pop said.
Pop rose from an uncheerful breakfast of 1 croissant, 1 roll of bread, 2 cups of coffee and a small pot of red currant jelly. This, it seemed to him, was no breakfast for a man, and moreover, he'd slept very badly. Outside, the day was slightly less violent. The wind had dropped a little, though not completely, and now rain was merely coming down in a mad, unremitting waterfall, a grey curtain obscuring all but the closer reaches of the harbour, sea and sky. In the small hotel lounge, behind rattling doors, among a cramped forest of decrepit wicker chairs, Mariette and Charlie were looking at French fashion magazines. The twins were playing Patience with Victoria, and Montgomery and Primrose noughts and crosses. Several French children were running noisily backwards and forwards, constantly pursued by the voices of remonstrating mammas calling them by name.
Hippolyte, Ernestine, Jean-Pierre, Marc-Antoine, Celestine, Fifi.
Pop thought these names were plain damn silly, and moodily congratulated himself that he and Ma, who was still upstairs giving Oscar his breakfast, had given their children sensible, solid names like Zinnia and Petunia, Primrose and Montgomery, Victoria, Mariette and Oscar. He put on his yachting cap and mackintosh and went out into the grey rain that had in it the chill of December, hopeful of somewhere finding himself an honest, solid breakfast. The entire length of the dark grey pavé running along the little harbour was deserted. Down in the harbour itself, the black figures of a few fishermen in oilskins were busy tightening the moorings of their blue sardine boats, on the masts of which the furled sails were rolled like copper umbrellas. In the morning air was a raw saltiness which sharpened the appetite with a sting. From a café at the end of the promenade came the smell of coffee, bitter, strong, deliciously mocking. Inside the café, Pop found himself to be the only customer. Presently, the waiter came and stood beside his table.
Monsieur?
3 boiled eggs. Soft.
Comment?
Thanks to Mr. Charlton, Pop knew what this meant.
Soft, s'il vous plaît.
Monsieur?
3 eggs soft,
Pop said.
X, s'il vous plaît. Soft.
Held up 3 fingers.
3, 3, soft, boiled. X. Yes, old boy, yes, oui.
With his forefinger he described what he thought were a few helpful circles in the air, and at this he felt the waiter seemed to understand. A sort of ruminating daze, he went away muttering X, X, X several times. 2 minutes later he came back to bring Pop a large treble brandy.
Ça va?
He said, and Pop could only nod his head in mute melancholy acquiescence. With increasing depression, as yet unrelieved by the brandy, Pop walked back to the hotel. The man in the pince-nez came hurrying forward from behind the reception desk, mole-like, blinking nervously.
Bonjour, Monsieur Larkin. It is possible to speak with you?
Oui, Pop said. What's up?
Please to step in one moment into the bureau.
Pop followed the man in the pince-nez through the door marked bureau. One corner stood a high, heavy oak desk with a fretted brass grill running round 3 sides. Behind this, the man in the pince-nez perched himself, less like a mole, more like an inquisitorial monkey.
Monsieur Larkin, it is merely a little matter of the passport.
Oh, I see. By the way, what is your name?
Molly.
Oh, Molly, Pop said. Always nice to know.
Monsieur Larkin,
Monsieur Mollet said,
I'm finding some little difficulty in seeing which of your passports is which.
He held up a passport for Pop to see.
Par example, this one. Mr. and Mrs. Charlton, this is not relating to you and Madame?
No, Pop explained. It wasn't relating to him and Madame, but to his daughter and her husband Charlie.
Ah, I see. And this one, Sidney Charles Larkin, this is relating to you?
That was it, Pop said. That was him, all right.
With 6 children?
With 6 children, Pop assured him.
Then what, Monsieur Mollet said, is this one relating to Florence Daisy Parker?
It's Ma.
Pardon? Comment?
It's my missus, me wife, Ma.
Your wife? A single lady? With another name?
That's it, Pop said. By this time, the brandy had made him feel more cheerful, more perky himself. Any objections?
You are taking a double room in this hotel to share with a single lady while you yourself have 6 children?
Pop actually laughed. Right, first time, he said.
In this case, I regret that I must ask you to leave the hotel.
Not on your Nelly, Pop said. He had a sudden sneaking notion that the Froggies thought he and Ma weren't respectable. He began to wish he'd had another treble brandy.
A Nelly? What is that?
Rhubarb, Pop said. Suddenly he remembered Mademoiselle Dupont.
Is this Miss Dupont's doing or yours? Where the pipe is she anyway? Is she back?
Mademoiselle Dupont is back. I have tried to spare her the unpleasantness.
Unpleasantness? Damn it, I thought froggies were broad-minded. Paris, you know, and all that lark.
This, Monsieur Mollet said severely, is not Paris.
Bet your Nelly it's not. It's brighter than a bricklayer's arms on a foggy Monday.
That I do not know about, Monsieur Larkin. I only know that...
Get Mademoiselle Dupont. Go on, you whelk. I want to talk to her.
Oh, very well, Monsieur Larkin. It was nearly 5 minutes before Mademoiselle Dupont came into the bureau. She seemed, Pop thought, about 38, rather plump and of medium height, and was wearing a black dress with pure white collar and cuffs, an arrangement that might well have been considered an attempt to make herself look a trifle younger. Monsieur Larkin? Bonjour, monsieur. She spoke formally, but with nervousness. She played now and then with a large bunch of keys suspended from a chain attached to the belt of her dress.
Bonjour, good morning. I hope you speak English.
I speak some English, yes.
Good egg.
Pop always felt more cheerful in the presence of women.
Well, I hear you're throwing us out.
Mademoiselle Dupont, transfixed at the sheer directness of this remark, could not speak. Her skin had that clay-coloured appearance so common in French women, giving them faces like half-cooked dough. Her hair, parted sharply down the middle, was very black. Her eyes, it seemed at first, to be black too, but when seen more closely, they were like two thick pieces of glass carved from an intensely green black bottle. There are times, monsieur, when one has to exercise a certain discretion. Pop, smiling, looked at Mademoiselle Dupont straight in the eyes. This was when he first discovered their unusual intensity and the fact that they were really more green than black.
If Ma and me don't mind, why should you?
Mademoiselle Dupont had no answer. She did not even begin to move her lips in reply.
Ma and me ran away when she was 16, eloped. Spent the night at Brighton. Oh, she was thinner then, more like you, more your size.
Once again, he transfixed Mademoiselle Dupont, looking straight into her eyes with a gaze of exceptionally friendly, perky intensity.
Same dark hair as you, too. Same sort of skin. Lovely.
Involuntarily, Mademoiselle Dupont drew a deep breath.
Telling you the story of me life already, Pop said. What a lark.
For a moment, Mademoiselle Dupont appeared to be thinking in French, for she suddenly said, Je ne sais...
I thought you were going to be a bit sticky about me and Ma. I don't know, a bit awkward. Were you?
Mademoiselle Dupont simply didn't know if she was or not. Pop was talking now in his intimate, quick-knitted fashion, smiling all the time, and Mademoiselle Dupont stood listening, as if partially mesmerised.
Cool, it was so rough last night, we thought we were going back home anyway, he said. Blimey, it was rough. Never thought it could be so rough and cold here in France.
But it will improve, she said. It will get better. It isn't always so.
Will it? Yeah, oh, but when? Blimey, look at it now.
Once again, Mademoiselle Dupont, utterly confused, appeared to be thinking partly in French. Dans 2, 3 jours, 2 or 3 days, the storm come and go, and then suddenly it was all over, and then la soleil, toujours la soleil, toujours, toujours, toujours.
Soleil?
The sun in French, soleil. Softly, Pop said he wished he could speak French like Mademoiselle Dupont, and she in turn stood once again as if mesmerised. In July it was so hot you could not bear it, she said. You could not bear the heat on the flesh.
No, bet I could, Pop said, and gave Mademoiselle Dupont a look of rapidity so near a wink that she began to think in French again.
Et l'orange, she started saying, vous n'avez pas peur pour l'enfance?
Comment?
Pop said, and remarked that Mademoiselle Dupont had got him there, he was afraid. Mademoiselle Dupont apologised and began to speak in English again and said she hoped the children had not been frightened by the storm.
Oh, slept like tops. Wish more on me head.
Did you not sleep well?
Terrible.
I'm sorry, was it the storm?
The beds. In that room. We'll have to change that room, more and me, if we're going to stay here.
For the third or fourth time, Pop transfixed her with a smile that was at once perky, soft, and full of disquieting penetration. "It is très, très difficile. I have no more rooms, Monsieur Larkin. Not one more."
"Couldn't spend another night in that horrible room," Pop said.
He thought of his battle with the elements. He hadn't been dry all night.
"And Ma won't, what's more."
Mademoiselle Dupont, without knowing why, felt suddenly ashamed. She felt inexplicably sorry that there had ever been any thought of ejecting Monsieur Larkin and his family.
"Nothing for it but a beach, I suppose. A bit difficult with Oscar, though."
Mademoiselle Dupont inquired if Pop meant sleeping on the beach, and who was Oscar?
"The baby," he said.
Mademoiselle Dupont found herself confronted by an emotional and physical dilemma. She was overcome by a violent desire to sneeze and at the same time wanted to weep. She compromised by blowing her nose extremely hard on a very small lace handkerchief with a note like that from a trombone. This stentorian call startled Pop into saying,
"Sounds as if you caught your death. Well, this rain will give the car a wash anyway."
Outside in the hotel yard, the Rolls stood with expansive dignity among a shabby crowd of Citroëns, Peugeots and Renaults. "That is your car, the large one?" Pop confessed that the Rolls-Royce was his, and with a wave of modest pride drew Mademoiselle Dupont's attention to the gilt monograms on the doors. These, he assured her, gave the car both class and tone.
"Some duke or other, some lord. Feller I bought it from home wasn't sure."
At the word Lord, Mademoiselle Dupont found herself flushing, not from embarrassment or shyness, but from sheer excitement. It was on the tip of her tongue to inquire if Pop was actually an English milord or not, but she checked herself in time. Nevertheless, she found it impossible to stop herself from supposing that Pop was, perhaps, a milord. She had once before had an English milord, a real aristocrat, to stay in the hotel. All day, and even for dinner, he'd worn mud-coloured corduroy trousers, much patched, a French railway porter's blue blouse, a vivid buttercup yellow neckerchief, and open green sandals. He had a large golden ambrosial moustache and thick chestnut hair that was obviously not cut very often and curled on his neck like fine wooden shavings. Mostly he smoked French workman's cigarettes and sometimes a short English clay. He also took snuff and invariably blew his nose on a large red handkerchief. From this, Mademoiselle Dupont had come to the conclusion that the English were to some extent eccentric. All the lower classes tried to behave like aristocracy, and all the aristocracy tried to behave like workmen. "I've been thinking," she said, "there is perhaps just one room that possibly you and Madame could have." With a final sidelong glance at the Rolls, she led Pop out of the bureau. Following Mademoiselle Dupont upstairs, Pop was pleased to make two interesting discoveries. One, that her legs, through her black dress, were rather long and were very shapely. From this lower angle on the stairs, he discovered also that he could see the hem of her underslip. It was a black lace one. This, he decided, was a bit of all right. It was perfect. It interested him greatly, his private theory being that all girls who wore black underwear were, in secret, highly passionate. He set aside these interesting musings in order to hold open the bedroom door which Mademoiselle Dupont had now unlocked with one of her large bunch of keys. "Please enter, Monsieur Larkin. Please to come in." The room, though not so large as the one he and Ma were occupying 2 floors above, was prettily furnished and a good deal lighter. It had one large mahogany bed, a huge Breton linen chest, several chairs covered in rose-patterned cretonne, and curtains to match. It also had a basin with running water. It lacked, Pop noticed, that odour of linseed oil, drain pipes, French cigarettes and leaking gas that penetrated every other part of the hotel. It seemed instead to be bathed in a strong but delicate air of lily-of-the-valley. "The room is not large," Mademoiselle Dupont said. She patted the bed with one hand, "but the bed is full size." That, Pop said, was the spirit, and he almost winked again. "And you see the view is also good." She stood at the window. Pop stood close beside her and looked out on a view of plage, sea, sand dunes, and unrelenting rain. As he did so, he couldn't help noticing that Mademoiselle Dupont herself also smelled deeply of lily of the valley.
Very nice, Pop said. I'm sure Ma would like this room.
I hope so, she said. It is my room. Pop at once protested that this was far too good of her, and under several of his rapid, disquieting smiles of thanks, Mademoiselle Dupont felt herself flushing again. There was no need to protest, she said, only to accept. The pleasure was entirely hers. And you see, there's even a little annex for the baby in here, she said, and showed Pop into a sort of box room, just large enough for little Oscar to sleep in. Laughing richly, Pop said he was absolutely sure they would be very comfortable in that pleasant room, and that nice bed, and with that nice smell of lily of the valley. C'est curieux, c'est extraordinaire, she said, starting to think in French again. How do you know this? Pop drew a deep breath and told her, in a swift flick of description, almost ecstatic, how he had a kind of sixth sense about flowers and their perfumes.
Acts like a key. Marigolds, right? I smell marigolds, and in a jiff I'm back in Ma's front garden where I first met her. Bluebells, straight away up in our woods at home. Cinnamon, well, it's Christmas. Violets, only got a smell then I'm back in the woods as a kid. The same with your lily of the valley. Never be able to smell it again without thinking of this room.
Mademoiselle Dupont confessed that they were her favourite flowers. Les muguets. They were all of springtime to her, as roses were of summer.
They suit you, Pop said.
Suddenly feeling that mere words were not enough, he gave Mademoiselle Dupont an affectionate, playful touch, half pinch, half pat, somewhere between the waist and the upper thigh. Mademoiselle Dupont's reaction to this was to experience a small but exquisite palpitation in the region of her navel. She could find no coherent word of either English or French to say, and she confusedly apologised once again about the Larkins' original room. I'm sorry it was so unsatisfactory, but it is old, the hotel. So much needs doing, and one does not know what to do.
I know what I'd do.
Yes, Mademoiselle Dupont said. What?
Pull it down. Pull the whole flipping thing down.
But it belonged to my father, my grandfather. My family have always owned it.
They're dead. It's dead. No use being sentimental. Comes a time.
I know we need an ascenseur. We need so much. But the money here in France, everything is so expensive. C'est formidable.
Always raise the money. I only want the ideas.
Mademoiselle Dupont laughed. Pop thought rather ironically. That may be for English milords and people who have Rolls Royces.
When you want anything bad enough, you'll always get it.
To this casual statement of philosophy, Mademoiselle Dupont made no reply.
Well, I'll go and tell Ma. She'll be tickled to death, I know she will.
Mademoiselle Dupont's ears, Pop saw, were pale and pretty and faintly flushed at the edges. I will see that your things are moved. Please tell Madame not to bother, and if there's anything...
Only the weather, Pop said. The sun, it's all we need. Soleil, Pop said.
After 3 days, the sun began to shine. It was warm enough for Mariette and Ma to lie in bikinis on the little, smooth, sanded plage. Mariette's figure was well suited to the bikini. Her breasts were round but firm, girlishly fresh but quite mature. Her waist was delicate and narrow, with hips of pear-shaped line. From behind she appeared to have a beautiful little saddle, to which the lower of the bikini's 3 scarlet triangles was tied with the slenderest of strings. Ma was not so lucky. She hadn't been able to get a bikini quite large enough to fit her, but there was, as she remarked, nothing much to them, and she had consequently run up 2 for herself, one in bright petunia purple, her favourite colour, and the other in brilliant salmon rose. Primrose, Petunia, Zinnia and Victoria all wore bikinis too, in shades of royal blue, green, pink, yellow and pure white, which they changed from day to day. On the whole, Ma wasn't much impressed by froggy women, young or old. The young girls who lay or pranced about the plage all looked what Pop called pale about the gills. Ma was sure that they all slept in their makeup. Their hair looked uncombed and tatty, and they seemed generally to wear it long, either untied or in horsetails. and their figures were nothing, Ma thought, absolutely nothing. Compared with our Mariettes, Ma reckoned. You'd think they were boys. I thought French girls were supposed to be so chic and all that. Blow me, some of them don't even shave where they ought to. The young men, on the other hand, were magnificent. Ma had never seen anything like it. All of them seemed to be tall, athletic, bronzed and lissom. Innumerable protruding knots of muscles stuck brownly out from all over them, accentuating arms, shoulders, chest and buttocks. Their hair was always perfectly crimped and waved, and round their middles they wore nothing but skin-tight pudding bags tied with string. They leapt in perpendicular fashion in the air, scissoring brown legs. They stood on their heads, did handstands, or pranced about like restless, straining racehorses. They played leapfrog or ran about square-chested like Grecian runners, hair slightly flowing, breasting the wind. They climbed invisible ropes with arms plaited with brown muscles, or did long, silent, earnest, dedicatory breathing exercises for the abdomen and chest. But mostly they played with beach balls, large, highly coloured, 2 or 3 feet in diameter, in segments of scarlet and green or yellow and violet, so inflated and so light that the Atlantic wind, when it caught them, rolled them swiftly away across acres of bare beach into distances of sea and dune and pine. When this happened, they showed high prowess as athletes, running in fleeting file or handsome echelon, Greek-like again, hair flowing, racing the wind. Mr. Charlton, who could see no point in these exercises, was glad merely to relax with Mariette in the sun, reading detective stories or occasionally turning an eye on Mariette, moving her perfect young body over to Brown on the other side, like a young, plump chicken on a spit. He felt mostly relaxed and contented, even when sometimes aroused by the voices of Ma. "Fetch everybody ice cream. Charlie, there, go on, there's a dear, big ones. Bring 2 for everybody and some nuts." Pop, too, was content. With his hypersensitive, keenly developed sense of smell, he could lie for hours breathing the scent of the sea and seaweed, sun-dried rocks and pines, tarry boats and fish being unloaded at the quay. He could translate these things into separate, living scenes without opening his eyes at all, just as he could smell Lily of the Valley in imagination and recapture Mademoiselle Dupont clear and close to him. Over the past day or two it had struck him that Mademoiselle Dupont had become more and more refreshingly attentive. She laughed whenever he met her on the stairs. Was the food right for Monsieur Larkin? Did Madame and the family like it? Were the children happy? Was there some special dish they would like? Pop hadn't the heart to tell her that he thought the food was mostly a terrible mistake, and that what he really wanted was rice pudding, stewed plums, and roast beef and Yorkshire. On the 5th morning she called him into the bureau in order to give him back the passports, apologising at the same time for keeping them so long. She also said, "I have been thinking that you might care to take an excursion on the 8th, that is, to Le Folguet. There is a great pardon there that day. It is the greatest and most beautiful pardon we have in Finistère." "Pardon?" Pop had no idea what a pardon was, but he listened respectfully as Mademoiselle Dupont went on to explain its religious significance and beauty. "Not much on religion. Don't care for dog collars." "Perhaps Madame and the children would care to go. You must please tell me if they do. I can give them all directions." Up to that moment, rather absent-mindedly, Mademoiselle Dupont had kept the passports in her hands. Suddenly she remembered them and handed them back to Pop, giving a little nervous laugh at the same time. Pop grinned quickly as he took the passports and asked to know what had amused her. "Ce sont les passeports," she said, starting once again nervously thinking in French. "It is rather curieux, a little bit funny." "Oh? How's that?" "It was when I was looking at the passports this morning," Mademoiselle Dupont had said. "It was très curieux, very curieux, but it occurred to me that if you are not married, well, you are still a single man." She laughed quickly and rather self-consciously, and Pop, in his customary rousing fashion, laughed too. That, he confessed, had never occurred to him either. "Hey, single chap, eh?" he said. "Well, well." That afternoon, when he went back to the plage after having a short after-lunch nap with Ma on the bed, he found Mr. Charlton in a state of unusual restlessness. Charlie had made a disturbing discovery. He had rumbled what the business of the big coloured beach balls was all about. They were all part of a design for the ensnarement, if not seduction, of Mariette. The young Frenchman, he'd discovered, had every wind direction beautifully worked out. In that way they could be sure that the beach balls would always float towards her, so that every 5 minutes or so they would find it necessary to invade the precious territory of scarlet bikini and naked flesh and, with voluble apologies, laughter and much athletic show, recapture them. Mr. Charlton made it clear he didn't care for it at all. On the morning of the 8th, Pop lay alone on the plage, basking for the first time in the true heat of the sun. The sky was actually the colour Mr. Charlton had so confidently predicted it would be. It hung overhead like a cornflower, brightest blue to the very distant edges of the sea that seemed to have receded across miles of newly bleached sand to the hazy rim of the world. The extra-sensory impressions that were so lively in him that morning told him that this was perfect. It couldn't possibly be more perfect anywhere, even to go off to a pardon, however beautiful, as Ma and all the rest had done. So by 10 o'clock the Rolls was away, Mariette driving, the boot packed with a large picnic lunch of Mademoiselle Dupont's preparing, together with several bottles of Vin Rosé and bags of peaches, sweet white grapes and pears. The children now liked Vin Rosé as much as ice cream, and much more than orange juice. Perfect, Pop kept saying to himself in the sun. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. You could actually feel the early September heat bristling with its heavy Atlantic salt, burning his chest and thighs and shoulders. Perfect. Ooh, good as champagne. 20 minutes later he was asleep on his face, and woke only just before midday to hear an elegant voice saying, "Hello there. Comment ça va, mon chéri? How's the beauty sleep, darling? It's me." Pop turned and looked up. Above him, a hatless vision, in shirt and slacks of warm, pale shade of apricot, was sitting on the sea wall. Down over the sand and dangled the long, languid legs of Angela Snow, his kindred spirit of the summer party of a year before. Pop leapt to his feet and said, "Très bien! Merci! Êtes-vous aussi, my old firework?" "Scream!" she said. "You speak the language." "Well, just enough. Count up to 10 and off of Van Rosie." "Been dying to see someone who's fun, and here you are." Angela Snow gave a serpentine twist of her body and leapt down onto the sand. Her hair had a glorious gold-white sheen on it. Her pretty feet were bare, except for flat yellow sandals that slipped on, Chinese fashion. When she sat down, her long legs curled themselves loosely underneath her. Her clear olive eyes seemed even larger than Pop remembered them, and she seemed to embrace him with them as she asked him all about himself and how he came to be there. "Holiday." "Not alone?" Her usually languid voice was quick, even eager. Pop at once explained about the family and how everyone else had gone to the great pardon at La Folge. "Iris, too," she said. "My sister, terribly religious Iris. Got the most god-awful relig, Iris has." She asked Pop if he was very relig. Pop confessed that being alive was his relig. That and earth and woods and flowers and nightingales and all that sort of lark, and everybody enjoying it. "Oh, wouldn't do for Iris," Angela Snow said. "Got to lacerate yourself. According to Iris, beds of nails. Fakir stuff." "Not much of a chum on holiday," Pop suggested. "Why did she come?" "My idea," Angela Snow said. "Thought I might find some arresting Breton fisherman to bed her down with. Sort of cure. Don't know of an arresting somebody, Cherie, do you?" Pop much enjoyed being called darling and Cherie by Angela Snow. "And how," she said, "are the virgins?" Angela Snow had never forgotten the virgins. 7 of them, and so foolish, riding on the donkeys at Pop's Derby in the summer gymkhana a year before. Almost needed changing still, she confessed, every time she thought of them. Dear virgins. "Iris is one," she said. "The dears do make such hard work of it." "Yeah, this place is full of them." "You don't say." Pop referred her to the boyish female skinnies, largely unwashed, who disport themselves listlessly about the plage. And French girls supposed to be so chic and all that, and fast. Even young Montgomery was bored. "Well, terribly strict country still," Angela Snow said. "Big mother is watching you and all that." "Nothing for the froggy boys to do but make eyes at Mariette." "Can't blame 'em," she said. "She's inherited all her father's virtues." Virtues? Pop laughed and said he didn't think he'd got very many of them. No, Angela Snow said, and gave him a smile of luscious simplicity. Chancing to look about him, Pop saw that the plage had miraculously emptied itself, as always, at the stroke of noon. In 5 minutes, every restaurant in the place would be full of ravenous masticators. The potage cultivateur would be on, stemming the first pangs of the pensionnaires. Everywhere the bread slicers would be working overtime. Suddenly, overcome by a sharp recollection that if you weren't there on time you fell behind in the noon race for nourishment and never really caught up again, Pop half got to his feet and said, "Suppose we ought to get back to the Beau Rivage before the troughs are empty." "Any good?" she asked the Beau Rivage. Pop was obliged to confess he thought the food was terrible. "Only place in this hole is Pierre's," Angela Snow said. "Out there towards the forest, about 10 minutes if you don't mind walking, shall we?" Pop said he hoped his legs would carry him. Angela Snow laughed and took his arm in her soft, slender fingers. "I'll see you don't fall by the wayside, chum. Lean on me, chérie." Pierre's stood in a clearing where forest and sand joined at the deep central cup of the bay. It appeared to be a shack built of bits of bamboo, pine boughs and old orange boxes. It looked, Pop thought, remarkably like an abandoned coal shed. Outside it, a few tables, apparently knocked up out of driftwood, were sheltered by blue and white umbrellas. Charcoal was smoking away under an iron grid built above bricks. A sign stuck on a pole said "Toilette" and pointed to a flimsy arrangement of almost transparent sacks slung up behind a tree. Angela Snow and Pop sat down at a table, and Angela said this was the greatest place for food you ever came across. The only problem was whether Pierre would like you. If he didn't, he wouldn't serve you. "Mad on me," she said. "Hello, lousy," Pierre said. "Why the bloody hell you turn up?" And then he stood over the table to slop into thick glasses 2 large Camparis. Angela Snow shook back her sumptuous golden hair. "How now, brown sow?" she said. "This is my friend, Mr. Larkin. Mr. Larkin Pierre. Mr. Larkin keeps pigs. He'll understand you." Hope you enjoy yourself. What do you want to eat, eh? Don't say roast beef, eh?" Pop's juices at once started flowing madly in anticipation. "Well, you won't get it, see? Today you get mules, Chateaubriand, and the best brie English bloody nose ever stank of and like it." "Scream!" Angela Snow said. "Killing!" Pierre gave a grin, part sugary, part lascivious, his thick lips opening to reveal a row of blackened teeth punctuated in the centre by a positive doorknob of gold. His body, Pop thought, was almost as white as Mars. His blue striped sweatshirt seemed to have been dipped in candle grease. His uncut black hair could have been knotted at his neck. Glimpses of a belly both hairy and sweaty appeared from time to time between the bottom edge of his shirt and the tops of his trousers, which were held up by some sort of bell rope, bright scarlet and hung with gilded tassels. "What one you want?" "Then Rosie," Pop said. Rosie, Pierre said. "Well, we don't have Rosie. Here you bloody well have what you get and you like it." "Mad," said Angela Snow. Pierre went away, dragging one foot like a pot-bellied crab crawling across the sand. "Going to bring Iris here one day," Angela Snow said. "Pierre's the type for her. Half an hour with him and she'd never be the same again." Scooping up his muscles and thinking that he wasn't going to get very fat on this lark, Pop watched Pierre grilling the Chateaubriand over a glowing bed of charcoal. Now and then Pierre scratched his long black hair or the hairs on his chest, and sometimes he spat over the grill into the sand. Watching him, Pop was reminded of Charlie's opinion that the French were the elite of Europe. France was the place. Everything was so cultured. "Two bloody steaks plus two bloody English. Bon appétit." A certain belching contempt filled the glowing autumn air. This, however, was merely yet another signal for Angela Snow to break into fresh peals of laughter and say what awful fun it was. "Change from the Beau Rivage and all that anyway, darling," she said. "It certainly was," Pop said, and then turned with intense relish to tackle the Chateaubriand and its accompanying pommes frites. After a struggle of 5 minutes or so, it struck him that the meat was, perhaps, a piece of dog. The charred rectangle was icy blue inside and exuded large quantities of blood. This, like the pommes frites, was stone cold. The inner sinews of the meat were so tenaciously bound to each other that nothing could separate them. "Terribly naughty of me," Angela Snow said. "You'd have liked mustard, wouldn't you?" It turned out to be English when it came, and Angela called it très snob to have English mustard. Pop, masticating hard at bits of dog, supposed it was.
Très snob. Rather good expression, he thought. Must tell Ma.
How about some cheese or fruit, perhaps? Pop, who was feeling a little less light, but not much, said he fancied both. For the next half hour, it was delicious to sit in the open air on the edge of the pines and eat cheese, peel big yellow peaches and suck grapes. And also, Pop thought, to watch newly arrived customers struggling with their rectangles of charred dog. Now and then, Pierre poured brandy over the Chateaubriands and set them alight. Pop made Angela Snow laugh ringingly by saying that he supposed that this was their way of making hot dog. "And coffee? What will you have with your coffee?" she asked. Pop said he fancied a Rolls-Royce. "One of your blinders?" Pop said it was, though Red Bull was stronger. "Think Pierre can mix it?"
Easy, Pop said. Half vermouth, quarter whiskey, quarter gin, dash of orange bitters.
"Well, that'll suit me too," she said. Soon, double Rolls-Royces had made Pop feel more like himself, and responded with an involuntary belch and a robust "perfect" when Angela Snow suggested a short siesta in the dunes.
"I'll get the bill."
No, she said. "My party."
"I'm paying,"
Pop said with all his charm.
"You think I don't know my technique? Rhubarb."
When the bill came, Pop looked at it and suddenly felt cold. The portions of charred dog had each cost 1,200 francs, the moules marinière 700 francs, and cheese 500 francs, the double Rolls-Royces each 1,400 francs, making a final total with tax on top of service and supplement on top of tax of 11,650 francs.
"What's covert?" he said. "What is blazes is covert? We never had covert."
Angela Snow laughed in her most celestial fashion. That, she explained to him, was just the breathing charge. Pop, who was never one to be unduly miserable over the cost of pleasure, thought this was very funny, and was still laughing loudly about it when they reached the dunes. He must tell Ma that one. The Trays Snoblark and the breathing charge. Jolly good, both of them. Angela Snow's first act on reaching the sand dunes was to cast off her shirt and drop her apricot slacks and stand before him in a yellow bikini so sparsely cut that nothing really separated her from pure golden nakedness. "Come and lie down with me, chérie. Come on." This invitation was delivered with such bewitching languor that Pop was at her side half in a dream before he really knew it. Almost at once, she closed her eyes. The deep olive eyes shutting out the large, pellucid eyes that were always so warm and embracing seemed now to offer him the further invitation to take in the whole pattern of her long, slender body, the slim, beautiful legs and arms, the sloping shoulders, and the tiny, perfectly scooped salt cellars below the neck, the small but upright breasts, and the navel reposing centrally below them, like, Pop thought, a perfect little winkle shell. As if knowing quite well that he was taking his fill of these things, she let her eyes remain closed for fully 2 minutes before opening them again. Then she smiled. "Suppose you know I'm madly in love with you?" Pop confessed he didn't know. It was news. "Outrageously all-consuming," she said. "Night and day."
"Yeah, jolly good," said Pa. "Perfect."
"Here's me, madly in love with you ever since that virgin firework lark, and you've never even kissed me." Pop had always been a great believer in first times, his theory being that there might never be another, especially where women were concerned. And now, with velvet artistry, one hand soft under her small left breast, he made the kiss last for 10 minutes or more. This experience left Angela Snow slightly light-headed. She seemed to come round, already slightly tipsy after the wine, as if after a deep, passionate faint. "He must save one of those for Iris sometime," she said. "And what a lucky creature his wife was." Pop laughed resoundingly. "What's funny?" she said.
Well, if everybody had their right, I haven't got a wife."
"Joke!" "It certainly was a bit of a lark," Pop said, "when you thought of it. Him and Ma not married." Did Angela mean she'd never heard? "Not a peep," she said.
"Must get it done some day. No good, you know. We've had another kid since I saw you."
"Good show means you're still agile, virile and fertile." Pop said he hoped so and granted her a second kiss, holding her right breast this time, again with prolonged tenderness. They lay on the dunes, watching the sun across the bay and occasional copper triangles of sail as the boats cut across the blue horizon for the rest of the afternoon. Pop couldn't help thinking what a beautiful place it would be for Mariette and Charlie to try out sometime. It might encourage them a bit. At last, when it was time to go, Angela Snow said, "See you soon, Poppet. Don't let it be too long. The nerves won't stand it." That night, as he sat in bed reading a 2-day-old Times and smoking his late cigar, he broke off several times from reading to tell Ma about Angela Snow, the terrible lunch, the bill, the Trey's snob lark, and the breathing charge. "Get round to kissing her?" Pop confessed that he had.
"So she's in love with me?"
"That pleased you, I bet. Nice girl. I like her. Bit of a card." For the third or fourth time that evening, Pop remarked that he was thirsty. Expected it was the mussels. All shellfish made him thirsty. "Well, go down and get a drink," Ma said. "Bring me one too." Pop got out of bed and put on a silk dressing gown, remembering something else as he did so.
"Ma, you remember that lot of pickled cucumbers, gherkins or whatever they were that I'd left over from that army surplus deal? The one I made nearly 6,000 out of?"
"The ones you got stored in the top barn?" Ma said. "Yeah, I know." Pop chuckled ripely.
"Hocked 'em all to one of the fishing boat skippers. Seems they're just what they want to pep up their diet with. Terrible monotonous diet they have, these froggy fishermen, potatoes and fish all boiled up together. Saw 'em doing it in gallons of wine.
"Hope you'll get paid."
"Coming over to pick 'em up himself and pay me," Pop said. "Puts in to shore 'em sometime." "What do you want then, eh? Hey, champagne?"
"Just what I could do with," Ma said. Pop found Mademoiselle Dupont going over her books in the bureau. "And what mark of champagne do you prefer, Monsieur Larkin?" The best champagne Pop could ever recall drinking was something called Bollinger 29. Mademoiselle Dupont shook her head. "In all France, I do not think you could now find one bottle of Bollinger 29, but I have Bollinger 34. That too is good." That, Pop said, would do him all right. He insisted on carrying it upstairs himself. Ice bucket and bottle and glasses on a tray. Mademoiselle Dupont stood at the foot of the stairs and watched him in soft admiration. Day by day it was becoming increasingly clear to her that Monsieur Larkin was a milord. Only a milord could smoke such expensive cigars in bed at night and ask for Bollinger 29. Only a milord could walk the quayside with such an elegant lady as she had seen him pass the hotel with that afternoon, so golden and aristocratic in her elegant apricot slacks. At the turn of the stairs, Pop turned, cocked his head to one side and looked back.
"Bonsoir, mademoiselle, dormez bien,"
he said nippily. "Bonsoir," she said. "Sleep well, milord." Pop thought that this milord lark just about took the biscuit, and he told Ma all about it as he uncorked the champagne in the bedroom.
"Call me my lord, Ma," he said. "What price that?"
Ma sat up in bed, popping Chanel No. 5 down her bosom. "Lord Larkin," she said. "Sounds all right. Not half bad. I think it sounds perfect, don't you?" Pop said he certainly did, and, laughing, softly poured out the champagne. In fact, it was more than perfect.
"I think it's jolly a tray snob, Ma." "Jolly tray snob."
Pop began to watch the events on the plage with growing uneasiness, if not dismay. Things were not going well at all. It was clear as daylight that Mariette and Charlie were right off hooks.
What's Mariette sulking for?
Pop wanted to know.
Damn it, she hardly ever speaks to Charlie nowadays.
Ma made the astonishing suggestion that it was probably lack of variety.
Variety?
Pop said.
Variety in what?
Well, before she was married, she never had less than 2 or 3 running after her, Ma said. Now she's only got Charlie. Ma went on. What do you think I let you run around with Angela Snow and old Edith Pilchester for? Pop said he hadn't the foggiest. Variety, said Ma serenely. Variety. Pop still couldn't understand why Mariette should always seem to be sulking. Should he have a quiet word with Charlie on the matter? Don't you do no such thing, Ma said. I've had a word already.
What, with Charlie?
No, with Mariette.
Give her any ideas?
Yes, Ma said. I did. I told her to start flirting. Pop whistled. Flirting's good for people, Ma said. It's like a tonic. You ought to know. Pop laughed and asked Ma if she thought of going in for a little herself. I might, she said. Only it's a bit difficult with Oscar. She broke off and looked at her wristwatch. It was 10 o'clock, time to give Oscar a drop of refreshment. With a slight sigh, she picked him up, dropped one side of her magenta bikini top and produced a handsome expanse of bosom like a full-blown balloon. Into this, Oscar buried himself with eager rapidity while Ma went on. Oh, talking about flirting and all that, I think we're going to have trouble with our Primrose. Primrose was 11.
Trouble? How?
In love. Bad. Pop said he'd go to Jericho. In love? How was that? How? Ma said. What do you mean, how? Naturally, that's how. Developing early, that's how, like I did. Oh, well, Pop said that was different. Who was it? Not some French boy. 2, Ma said. Pop supposed there was safety in numbers. Ma firmly shook her head. That's just it. Can't sleep at night. She's trying to give one of them up and can't decide which one it's got to be.
Thought you said it was a good thing, Pop said.
What?
Variety.
Ma regarded him with something like severity over the top of little Oscar's bald dumpling of a head. Sometimes I'm surprised at you, Sid Larkin, she said. It was always a bit of a bad sign when she called him Sid Larkin. It's a very tricky age. You have to be careful what you say to her.
Me? I haven't said a word.
Ma deftly shifted little Oscar from one side of her bosom to the other. No, she said darkly, you haven't. Much you will.
Oh? When?
When the time comes, Ma said blandly. When the time comes. Ma abruptly changed the subject by saying, going back to Charlie. Sits on this beach too long, he's moping. Take him down to the harbour and have a drink with one of your fisherman friends. Didn't you say you had another deal cooking? That was right, Pop said he had. He got the froggy skipper interested in 100 cases of tinned gherkins in vinegar that he hadn't been able to hock to anybody else up to now. It would show about 300% profit if it came off.
Good idea,
he said. He put one finger into his mouth and with a sudden piercing whistle, shrill as a diamond on glass, startled the entire plage into thinking a train was coming. Mr. Charlton recognised the sign and came strolling over.
Put your top hat on, Charlie, old man. I'm taking you down to the harbour for a wet fit.
Charlie said he was fit and called a few words of explanation to Mariette, who had discarded her bikini for a remarkable strapless sunsuit in brilliant cinnamon with a boned front that uplifted and enlarged her bust to a sumptuous and thrilling degree. The beach balls would be floating over any minute now, Charlie thought, and he wondered suddenly if he had the courage to leave her there. She looked maddeningly beautiful, as she always did when sulky. Today she was all steamy voluptuousness, lying there languidly pouting in the warm morning sun. And he called, "You're really absolutely sure you don't mind if I go? Have a good time. Don't get drunk," she said. Pop and Charlie chose a pavement table at the cafe on the harbour's edge. Pop got the sudden idea that the occasion was one when they might try something a little special. What did Charlie think about a real drink, Red Bull or something of that sort? First class idea, Pop, Mr. Charlton said. Absolutely first class. Pop, slightly astonished at the strenuous vehemence of Charlie's tone, gave him a sharp glance of inquiry. Charlie was feeling a private need for a strong pick-me-up. It depressed him increasingly each time he thought of the young French gods, their stupid great beach balls, and Mariette sunning herself in her sumptuous cinnamon. As Pop was about to call Garçon and began an explanation as how to mix the Red Bulls, he saw Captain Brisson arrive. Pop always called him Captain. Huge, florid and purple. He looked very much like a large bulldog with heart disease. Pop started to explain to the captain about the Red Bulls, and did he want one?
Please, what name? Red Bull, you say?
Red Bull, it's a self-propeller, Mr. Charlton said. A blinder.
Please?
Mr. Charlton summoned a waiter, and in rapid French explained the composition of the cocktail that only a year before had knocked him flat. He was stronger now. He could take a dozen.
Good,
Captain Brisson said, presently tasting the Red Bull, which Charlie had had the forethought to order double.
good. I like.
Searching stabs of raw alcohol inspired Charlie to fresh, almost rapturous enthusiasm for the virtues of the cocktail. "Santé!" he cried.
Santé,
Captain Brisson said.
cheers, Pop said. Santé.
"Cheers!" the captain said. "Santé!" Charlie said. "Down the hatch!" He already thought, as Pop and Captain Brisson sat discussing the question of sliced gherkins in vinegar, that he felt a great deal better. Pop was feeling pleased with himself too. The captain had made a very reasonable offer for the 100 cases, and the deal was now completed except for the formality of a little paper. Since Pop was incapable of writing his name and the captain incapable of writing English, it devolved on Mr. Charlton to draw up a sort of invoice agreeing price and quantity.
I am content,
the captain said. His signature and Pop's cross, binding nobody and nothing at all, were added to Mr. Charlton's document, which the Frenchman kept. Pop never kept records. It was all in his head. The captain and Pop shook hands. Then Pop knocked his Red Bull straight back, declaring that the proceedings called for another drink. "You bet," Charlie said.
Please,
the captain said.
I would like to pay.
"Rhubarb," Charlie said. "This one's on me." After the second Red Bull, the memory of the young French gods and their stupid beach balls and still stupider prancings no longer disturbed him quite so much. He started to see the harbour through a viscous rosy cloud. About this time, Captain Brisson said he ought to be going back to his boat, and Pop said they ought to be going too.
Rhubarb,
Charlie said loudly. "Hell's bells, we just got here."
please excuse,
the captain said. "Rhubarb," Charlie said. "I thought the French were drinkers." The captain again protested that he had to get back to his ship, and Pop said very well, that was all right, and he hoped to see him soon, perhaps in England.
In England, yes,
the captain said.
I come soon when teeth are ready.
"What teeth?" Charlie snapped. The captain slipped from his mouth what he explained to Pop and Charlie were his temporary set of dentures. The new ones would be ready in a month or so in England.
National outlook,
Pop reminded Charlie.
My mate, Captain said, he hath a new wooden leg. There's the National Health Lark for you, Charlie, old man, Pop said. Free for all, even the froggies, wooden legs and all.
"Rhubarb to the National Health Lark," said Charlie aggressively, "and double rhubarb to the froggies." Soon after Captain Brisson had disappeared, Pop saw across the street a figure waving to him with a white and chocolate scarf. He did not need to hear the fluted call of "darling" to know that this was Angela Snow. She was dressed in white shorts and a coffee-coloured linen blouse and white open sandals in which her bare painted toenails glistened like rows of cherries. With her was a girl in a pea-green cable-stitch sweater and a skirt of indeterminate colour that might have once been mustard. "This," said Angela Snow, "is my sister Iris." Pop and Charlie rose to shake hands, Charlie unsteadily. "Good. Splendid," Charlie said. "Just in time for a snifter." "Darlings," Angela Snow said. "My tongue's hanging out." Iris was a solid, shortish blonde of rising 30, with a skin as hard as marble and more or less the colour of an acid drop. Her eyes were almost lashless. The complete absence of eyebrows made her face actually seem broader than it was, as well as giving it a look of completely bloodless astonishment. Her hair was cut in a bob, and she had small white ankle socks of exactly the kind that French girls wear. Charlie demanded of the two girls what would it be, and presently Angela Snow was drinking Pernod and her sister a small bottle of Perrier with ice. Charlie and Pop decided at the same time that this was as good as any a moment to have a fourth Red Bull, and whilst this was being mixed, Pop asked Angela Snow when she was coming to lunch. "Oh, whatever you say, dear boy. At the given moment I shall be there."
Tomorrow?
"Tomorrow, darling, as ever is. Bless you."
And your sister? Pop said. Would she care to join us too?
"I'm sure she'd adore to." "Impossible," I said. "I go to Gamilio to see the Calvary, and then the ossuary." The word ossuary startled Pop so much that he gave a sort of frog croak into his Red Bull, which had just arrived.
What is an ossuary? Sounds tray snob.
"Bone house," Angela Snow said.
Same to you, Pop said.
"Oh, scream," she said, and everyone, with the solid exception of Iris, roared with laughter. Even before the arrival of the fourth Red Bull, Charlie was feeling great. "Rhubarb," he said to Iris Snow. "Of course you could come. It's langoustine day tomorrow. Have them every Thursday. Don't you do a langoustine?" Iris thought eating had much in common with the other deadly sins, and consequently existed mostly on dry toast, cheese biscuits, and anchovy paste. "You see, she visits somewhere different every day," Angela said in explanation. "Oh, the Calvaries and the crosses, the dolmens and the Mears, the allées couverts and the tumuli. Iris has to see them all." Pop sat open-mouthed before what he thought was the oddest female he'd ever seen in his life, but was saved from pondering over her too long by a sudden, almost pugnacious question from Charlie. "And how," he demanded of Iris, "do you travel, Miss Snow? By a car, or what?" "I think walking is the only true and right way of seeing things. Walking leads to contemplation, contemplation to mood, and mood to meditation, so that when you get there, you're at one with the place you're visiting. So I walk to all the nearest ones and go to all the distant ones by train." "By train?" Charlie said. "Well, what train? Not by any chance the little train?" "Well, of course, what else?" "My God!" Charlie gave a shout of delight and gazed at Iris Snow with an alcoholic rapture. "She knows my little train! Hear that, Pop? She knows my little train!" No doubt about it, Pop thought. Charlie was as drunk as a newt. It reminded him of the time he had first met him and how Mariette had had to lend him pyjamas and put him to bed. There was the same raving, rhapsodic light in his eyes. "Chuffing away over the heather," Charlie said. "Chuffing away for miles. I'm once. Where was it? Saint-Paul-de-Lyon. No, not that somewhere. No. Has Saint-Paul-de-Lyon two cathedrals?" "You might say that it has," Iris Snow said. "There's the cathedral itself, and then, of course, there's the Chapelle de Crèzque. Much, much more magnificent." "It was there," Charlie said with a rhapsodic jolt in his voice. "It was there."
What was?
"The first time I ever really saw the world. Constantly. From that tower, you know, you can see 70 other towers," I said. Of course, on a clear day. "Never forget," Charlie said. "'Cause you talk about a wild surmise, silent upon a peak in Darien."
Charlie is off, Pop said. More Shakespeare.
"Keats," Charlie said. "Keats."
Same thing, Pop said.
"Whenever I go there again," Iris Snow said, "I shall think of you." "Do! Think of me." Suddenly he was on top of the tower again, on top of the world. Everything was splendidly revelatory and wonderful. His insides felt rich with Red Bull. His veins were a jumble of wires that sang like harp strings. He heard himself order a fifth Red Bull in a voice that echoed inside his head as a cry might have done through one of those sepulchral allées couverts that Iris found so fascinating. Drinking it, he was aware that his intestines were on fire, and he suddenly gave a belch of rude immoderation. Magnifique, he kept telling Iris Snow. Magnifique! Rhubarb! And he didn't care a damn for any of the bastards, did she? Whether it had anything to do with this robustly repeated inquiry he never knew, but suddenly he came to a vague realisation that neither Angela Snow nor her sister were there any longer. Oh, well, the snow's gone, he said. Melted? Jolly good joke, he thought. Magnifique! Snow's all melted! Some time later he was dimly aware of walking back to the plage with Pop. All froggy as you like, he was saying as they reached the plage. Hey, Pop, no guts, no red ball, no red blood, eh? Hey, can't take it, eh? Without waiting for an answer, he made a sudden, spasmodic leap onto the sand, landing midway between Ma, who was giving further refreshment to Oscar, and Mariette, who, sumptuous in her fiery cinnamon-in-the-noon sun, was flirting madly with a muscular Frenchman, bronzed as evenly all over as if every inch of colour had been painted on. Charlie at once uttered a queer cry, half in warning, half in anger, and kicked the startled Frenchman twice up the backside. He, however, was less startled than Pop, who suddenly heard Charlie, as he lugged an astonished Mariette to her feet, ripping out the challenging words, "And tomorrow you'll come on the little train, hear that? You'll come with me on the little train." In bed that night, in the quiet of darkness, Pop was still trying to work out this violent episode for himself.
So that was what that hoo-ha was about, that little train. Don't get it, Ma, do you?
Ma said of course she got it. It was plain as a pikestaff. Charlie wanted to go on the little train and Mariette didn't, that's all. Lot of fuss for nothing, Pop thought, all over a little thing like that. All over a train. Not at all, Ma said. It's always the little things. That train means a lot to Charlie. Lying under the lee of Ma's huge mountain of a body, Pop found himself going back over the day, and in the course of doing so remembered something else he thought remarkable.
Heard a word today, though, Ma? Never even heard it on the telly yet, and I'll bet you never have heard it either.
Oh, what was that? I wanted to know.
Ossuary.
Whatever in the world did that mean?
Bonehouse to you,
Pop told her. Do you mind? Ma said, and she kicked him hard under the bedclothes. Whatever next? You'll have the twins picking you up in no time.
Sorry, Ma. Dormez bien. Sleep well.
Sleep well, my foot, Ma said, and gave her handsome head a swift twist on the pillow so that she was lying full face to him. What makes you think I'm all that tired? Next morning, after breakfast, Ma called Pop's attention to an event a week ahead. You know, she said, what it is next Thursday? Pop didn't, except that they were going home. That's Friday, Ma said. Thursday's 29th, I mean. Pop said he couldn't think what the 29th meant at all. He only knew that the month at Saint-Pierre-le-Port seemed to have gone like the wind. Mariette and Charlie, their wedding anniversary.
Completely forgot.
Trouble is, you don't get much practice with wedding anniversaries, do you? Pop suggested darkly that he and Ma made up for it in other ways. Good thing, too. Anyway, I thought we ought to give them a party.
Perfect idea, said Pop. Jolly fine idea. Perfect. Tray snob.
I thought we could ask Angela Snow and her sister and perhaps Mademoiselle Dupont. How does that strike you? Pop said that nothing could have struck him better. By the way, Ma said, what's Angela Snow's sister really like? Pop thought hard for some moments and then said,
all I know is she wears false boozies and she's very pale.
Oh, what a shame, Ma said. She always pitied girls who had to wear those things. Good boozies were a girl's crowning glory. He was glad, Pop added, to see that Mariette and Charlie were on hooks again. I love birds, Ma said. We must give them a good time on Thursday, the tops. Best party they could think up, Pop said. Now, what did Ma suggest? Well, Ma said, we've got Angela Snow coming to lunch today. We can get Mademoiselle Dupont in over coffee and all talk about what we're going to eat and drink and so on. How's that strike you? Again, Pop thought it struck him very well. The expense could be damned. The gherkins and the cucumber in vinegar lark would take care of that. The day was coolish, with a touch of that bristling westerly wind that could blow fine sand into every corner and crevice like chaff from a thresher. Even Angela Snow had put on a thick red sweater. Summer was nearly over.
Let's give the Van Rosie a rest, shall we, Mark?
Pop said.
Let's have something a bit more warming.
Just what she felt like, Ma said. Pop must choose a good one. Pop turned to Angela Snow and suggested that she should make the choice. The customary Thursday langoustine not having arrived because the sea had been too rough, it presently turned out that for lunch there was potage de jour and omelette au fromage, followed by côte de porc grillée with haricots verts. That case, Burgundy, Angela Snow said.
The real McCoy. Not half larks, the best.
Angela Snow said she thought the Chambord Musigny 47 couldn't be bettered.
Pop said, make it 2 bottles.
The waitress brought the wine in a basket cradle. A lot of dust covered the bottle, and this, to Pop, was a sure sign of something good. The waitress then pulled the cork and poured out a little of the wine for Pop to taste, but he was quick to say,
No, Angela must taste it.
She did. Corked, she said firmly. No doubt about it, must go back. A hush settled on the table, broken only after some seconds by Primrose. What's corked, Pop? Pop hadn't the remotest idea what corked was. Obviously this wine lark was a bit dodgy, he thought, and privately decided he must go into it a bit more closely. Of course it can happen any time, anywhere, Angela so said. It's nobody's fault, it's one of those things. Pop was relieved to hear it, and was on the verge of saying that corked might not be a bad word to describe Iris Snow, when he thought better of it. The direct result of all this was that when coffee was brought, Mademoiselle Dupont came to the table in more than usually nervous, apologetic mood. She apologised several times for the unfortunate incident of the Chambord Musigny. She would have rather cut off her right hand than it should happen to Milord Larkin and his family. At the word Milord, Angela Snow was astounded into silence, from which she hadn't recovered by the time Ma and Mademoiselle Dupont started to plan the party. First, to decide how many people, Mademoiselle Dupont suggested. Ma counted up the heads. Not counting Oscar, I think he's a bit young, don't you, she said. I think there'll be around a dozen. That includes you, she said to Angela Snow, and your sister, and, she said to Mademoiselle Dupont, you too. Mademoiselle Dupont's pale olive face at once started flushing. She was most flattered, most honoured, but really it couldn't be. There would be so much travail, and Alphonse would need to be watching.
Who's Alphonse?
Pop said. Oh, he's the chef. He's not an easy man.
Alphonse will be looked after, said Pop, who had now lit up one of his best Havanas. The main thing is the grub for the kids, he said to Charlie and Maria. What do you fancy to start with?
It was Mr. Charlton, always so bang on the target in these things, who made the happy suggestion that they ought to begin with melon au porto. With that, he pointed out, you eat and get a drink at the same time. Mademoiselle Dupont thought she could get the lovely small Charentais melons, which were the best if she tried hard. Then may I suggest filet de sole truffe? Truth, the twins started saying. Truth.
Quiet,
Pop thundered, and the twins stopped as if been throttled. How do you feel about that, Mariette? Ma said. Wouldn't rather have lobster? How is the filet de sole composed? Charlie said. Mademoiselle Dupont started to describe the contents of the dish with both verve and tenderness. Vin blanc, white wine, butter, les truffes, and quelques autres choses très délicieuses.
Sounds just the job. Chips with it?
Mademoiselle Dupont recoiled from the suggestion of chips with silence. The Milord was a comic man sometimes. And now as to meat, or should it possibly be chicken, or perhaps some other bird, she inquired. Suddenly, Victoria bit Zinnia sharply on the ear. Nobody took much notice of this except Petunia, who threw at Victoria a piece of the omelette au fromage she hadn't been able to eat. In a second, all three girls were crying.
Quiet!
Pop thundered for the second time in 10 minutes, and there was instant silence at the table, so that Ma remarked with pride, as she often did, that Pop had them at a word. The effect of this was to impress Mademoiselle Dupont tremendously. The English milord was obviously a man born to command. This was the season for perdrix. What was the English word? Partridge? Shouldn't they therefore select partridge? Perdrix, perhaps, à la mode d'ici. It suddenly occurred to Pop that he had heard these ominous words before, and in a flash he remembered the pregnant sausage rolls with steam coming out of their ends.
Partridges? No, see, you think so. Not à la mode d'ici. If it's all right with Charlie and Mariette, he said, I know what I should like to have.
Go on, say it, Ma said. I know.
Roast beef and Yorkshire.
Biff! Biff! The twins started saying, but this time a single look was enough to silence them. Can't wait, Charlie said. Lovely, Mariette said. Couldn't be anything better. Oh, Pop, you always have the sweetest ideas. Pop, feeling rather flattered by this, gave one of his perkiest, richest smiles at Mademoiselle Dupont, who responded confusedly by saying, roast beef, of course, that we can arrange. But what else was this you said? The Yorkshire? Pop started to explain that this was, in his opinion, a pudding that had no equal. I see, Mademoiselle Dupont said. It is merely a question of whether L.F.P can make it. I doubt it very much.
Then Ma can make it for him, Pop said.
Mademoiselle Dupont professed to be instantly and completely horrified. It was unthinkable that a stranger should go into the kitchen, still less teach Alphonse how to make strange dishes. He was at the best of times a temperamental man, and sometimes, after drink, ran about with carving knives.
Fetch Alphonse, Pop said. I dare say he wouldn't say no to a brandy. I want one too.
Alphonse also, Mademoiselle Dupont recalled but not allowed, had a mistress in Morlaix and two in Brest. He visited the three of them in rotation, and they too sometimes had strange effects on his stability. Alphonse didn't say no to a brandy. He was a man of stocky proportions, with very black hair, parted down the middle, with millimetrical exactitude, and polished with a great deal of violet brilliantine. His eyes were protuberant, but handsome. In the space of 3 seconds from first entering the dining room, he managed to give Ma, Angela Snow, and Mariette the quickest, most comprehensive once-over. Since Alphonse spoke no English, it was left to Mr. Charlton, translating instructions from Ma, to explain the composition of what Mademoiselle Dupont called the pudding à la Yorkshire. These instructions were listened to by Alphonse with aloofness, not to say contempt, while he drank in the visionary beauty of Angela Snow. Suddenly Alphonse became unexpectedly voluble, and first Mademoiselle Dupont and then Mr. Charlton translated his words for Ma. He said, if you will write it down on paper, it shall be made as you wish. And is it the same as for crepe? Pancakes, Mr. Charlton explained. Oh, exactly the same, Ma said. Couldn't be more right.
Ça va bien?
Pop said.
Merci beaucoup, Alphonse.
Alphonse said, merci, monsieur, and immediately became suddenly voluble again. This time it was to offer the suggestion that the beef should be contre-filet, which Mademoiselle Dupont applauded as being absolutely right. Quite excellent. And now, what about afters? Ma said.
Ah,
Pop said smartly, picking it up in a flash. Les après. Alphonse looked witheringly about him for a second or two, and then held a short conversation with Mademoiselle Dupont, who said, Alphonse is suggesting either crêpe Suzette for dessert or bombe surprise. It was at this moment that Angela Snow came out of a half-dream to find herself being shamelessly and mentally undressed by Alphonse over large, handsome eyes. I think myself the crêpe Suzette, she said, staring straight through Alphonse. They'll keep him busier. That settles it, then, Ma said.
No, it don't. Said Pop, what about a cake? Got to have a cake. Midnight champagne and all that lark.
Oh, Pop, lovely, Mariette said. Cake and champagne. It's like being married all over again.
Second honeymoon, Charlie, second honeymoon,
Pop said, hoping the words wouldn't be lost on him. Second honeymoon. Mademoiselle Dupont said Alphonse would be most honoured to make the cake. And if there was anything else they wished, they only had to ask. For another half hour, while Charlie, Mariette and the children went to the plage and Pop for a gentle snooze on the bed, Ma and Angela Snow sat outside on the terrace drinking coffee. Presently Angela went back into the hotel on the pretext of telephoning a hairdresser, but in reality on the off chance of running into Pop downstairs. But the lounge, the reception desk and the stairs were all deserted, and then she suddenly realised that she might run into Alphonse instead. She didn't care for Alphonse. The process of being mentally undressed by strange men had never amused her, nor, for some reason, did she like men who parted their hair down the middle. "Did Mademoiselle wish for something, please?" It was Mademoiselle Dupont who came to the door of the bureau. Angela Snow said she was wondering about a hairdresser and was there one she could go to in the town. "Oh, there is nothing exciting here, nothing soigné. One must go to Morlaix or Brest." "Oh, then I might go to Brest. Philippe, that is the name. Philippe," Angela Snow said. "Do you go there?" "I regret, not often. I cannot afford it." "No? Not even for the party?" Mademoiselle Dupont, who had been torn all day by the question of whether to have a hairdo or a new corset for the party, had almost decided on the corset, could only gaze in silence at Angela Snow's exquisitely smooth, aristocratic yellow hair and wish that her own were like it, so that such difficult dilemmas and choices never arose. "Got to make the party a success, you know," Angela Snow said. "I think that Milord or Larkin," Mademoiselle Dupont said, "will see to that. He has a flair." Drawn up sharply by the second mention of the word Milord that day, Angela Snow had no time to make any sort of comment before Mademoiselle Dupont said, "Am I right in thinking that, yes, he is a Milord?" "Down to the ankles," Angela Snow said. "And like every Englishman, he's sure his home is his castle." At the mention of the word castle, Mademoiselle Dupont was unable to speak. A castle, a chateau. There was something overpowering about the word castle. After Angela Snow had departed, Mademoiselle Dupont went upstairs. In her room, she took off her dress, as she did every afternoon, and lay down on the bed. Like Angela Snow, she had hoped for the chance of running into Pop on the stairs, but nothing had happened. She lay there for an hour alone in silence, thinking largely of Milord, Larkin, the castle, and how altogether surprising the English were. She remembered the occasion when Pop had caressed her, brief and idle though it had been, with a warm, swift hand, and how he would forever remember her bedroom when he caught the scent of Les Mougets. At the end of it, she decided there was nothing for it but to have her hair dressed at Philippe's and buy the new corset too. She would have her hair done in that empire style that would give her the illusion of height she needed so much. The corset would be a black one trimmed with lace in Parma violet at the top and bottom. The evening of the party was warm and sultry. Only the softest westerly wind ruffling the sea into small white pleats on the sand along the plage. Dinner, Mademoiselle Dupont had suggested, should be at 8:30. This would give the only two French families remaining in the hotel time to finish their food in comfort before retiring to the lounge. She had herself superintended the laying of one long table, decorating it with bright orange dahlias. Pop, who entranced everybody by appearing in a biscuit-coloured lightweight suit and a yellow silk bow tie with large cranberry spots on it and a handkerchief to match, spent most of the time between 6 and 7 mixing punch in the bar, tasting it frequently. It was known as Colonel Bramley's Punch, and you could have it either hot or cold, Pop deciding that he would make it cold. The main ingredients were rum, white wine, curacao, lemon and sugar, but after the first mixing, Pop decided that the flavour of rum was, well, if anything, rather too prominent. Not everybody liked rum. He added brandy. This brought out a certain heaviness in the mixture. Needed sharpening up a bit. He tried a tumbler of kirsch for this and decided that it was exactly the right thing for giving the punch a subtler but at the same time more brittle tone. When the ice was added just before 7 o'clock, when everybody was expected to arrive, he decided that another bottle of white wine and a second dash of brandy wouldn't do anybody any harm at all, and these were added together with large slices of fresh orange and a scattering of cocktail cherries, which had the effect of making the whole thing look pretty, and at the same time quite innocuous. Ma, Mariette, Charlie and the children gathered in the bar at 7 o'clock. There was no sign of Angela Snow and her sister until 7:45, or of Mademoiselle Dupont until nearly 40 minutes later. In the meantime, the children drank Coca-Cola and orange juice, and the 4 grown-ups sampled the punch. Sometimes Ma allowed the children to sample the punch too, and also sneak a slice of orange or cherry out of it with their fingers so that they could have an extra suck. Ma was wearing a low-cut dress in deep purple with a narrow mink stole. She was drenched in a new perfume called Kick, and was wearing a pearl and diamante comb in one side of her hair and 3 handsome rows of pearls round her neck. Mariette was wearing a dress of stunning simplicity in burgundy velvet, effective in its sheer richness, but also because there was so little of it, and a necklace of garnet and diamond that Pop had bought her in Brest for the anniversary. As the punch was going down rather too fast, Pop decided to add another harmless dash of rum, a little quiche and a glass of brandy now and then. As soon as Angela Snow and her sister arrived, he remarked how warm the evening was and was quick to press them to a cooling glass. Ingredients, Angela Snow said as she tasted it. I think it's another of your blinders. Cheers, she went on to say, if it was. If not, there was plenty of time.
A woman's magazine recipe. Practically teetotal,
Pop explained.
Well, it's actually the coof that makes it what it is.
Iris Snow, who liked Pop's word coof, sipped happily. Her hair looked less home-cut than usual, Pop thought. The dark coffee-brown frock she was wearing, apart from the fact that in the haste of dressing she'd evidently had some difficulty in balancing the 2 protuberances underneath it so that one was much lower than the other, suited her quite well and was modestly attractive. Angela Snow's dress had everyone wide-eyed in admiration. Pop thought it a corker. If she had a stitch on underneath it, he would be more than surprised. The embroidered purity of its line, somehow accentuated by her long drop earrings, was even more fetching than its colour, a pale turquoise, and the fact that it fitted like a skin. About 8 o'clock, Monsieur Mollet crept in, mole-like as ever, as if out of hiding. He had been sent to say that Mademoiselle Dupont wouldn't be long. She'd been delayed by complications in the kitchen. She had, in fact, been delayed by complications of the new corset. It was rather tight and the zip was awkward. Twice she had run down for one of the chambermaids to come and help her zip her up, but they were all giving a hand in the kitchen. And it was Monsieur Mollet who at last came up to her room to face the unparalleled embarrassment of finding Mademoiselle Dupont less than half-dressed, with a figure white as marble under a shining sheath of pure black and purple frills. The experience left him not knowing whether he was going this way or that. It was then crowned by the vision of the tall English girl and the disturbing fact that though she was fully dressed, she actually seemed to have far fewer clothes on than Mademoiselle Dupont had in her bedroom. Pop gave him a glass of punch, which he accepted in a nervous daze. Nobody took much notice of the self-effacing little figure in black coat and pinstriped trousers, and presently he crept out again, head held timidly down, so that he accidentally knocked against Pop, who was ladling out a 3rd glass of punch for Charlie.
"Oh, quell twerp,"
Pop said, and there was laughter from everybody except Angela Snow, who suddenly realised that for some unaccountable reason she felt intensely sorry for the little reception clerk. It was 25 minutes past 8 before Mademoiselle Dupont entered the bar. She was wearing all black, with long pearl-drop earrings to give the illusion of that extra height she needed. She was enveloped in a strong, sensational cloud of lily-of-the-valley. Pop went straight over to her, clasped her by both hands and said, Mademoiselle, enchanté. As if he'd been doing it all his life. Delayed in the kitchen, my foot, Angela Snow thought, and realised suddenly that she was madly jealous. Fascinating tie, she said, and went over to finger Pop's large yellow and cranberry butterfly that made him look so dashing. French? English, Pop said. Has that air, she said. The froggies simply couldn't do it, dear boy. The word froggies made Mademoiselle Dupont bristle. She deliberately turned her back on Angela Snow and was asked to be told what this cool, charming liquid was. In Anglais, punch, Pop said. Ah, le punch. Spécialité de la maison Larkin, Pop said. Larkin special, goes down well, eh? Très bon, n'est-ce pas? Extraordinaire, excellent, Mademoiselle Dupont said, and then remembered how, in books about England, one always read of gentlemen drinking le punch. Undoubtedly, it was an aristocratic thing. She now suggested that they might, at any time, go in to dinner. Pop, ladling out their last glasses of punch and sending a final tumbleful to Alphonse in the kitchen, cordially agreed. Everyone seemed properly warmed up, companionable and happy. Even Iris Snow, who had eaten nothing but 2 cream crackers since 12 o'clock midday, felt like a canary. After the cooling punch, the softer, warmer touch of the melon au porto was like a velvety caress. Everyone agreed that had been very well chosen, full marks. Absolutely. Even the twins mopped it up in no time, asking what it was called. There it is on the menu, Charlie said. You can read it. Melon au porto. It's melon with port wine. Porto, Porto, oh mother shorto, diddle-dum, dorto. The twins started shouting, and the smiling Pop for once had no word of reprimand. A light white wine of Loire, a little dry, accompanied the sole. It was colder, if anything, than the punch had been. Ma remarked that she thought the sole was the best bit of fish she'd had in France, and Mademoiselle Dupont beamed. Pop regretted the absence of chips, but he didn't complain. Under the effect of the cold white wine of the Loire, Iris Snow began to feel more and more like a singing bird. Now and then she became conscious of one of her protuberances slipping a little under her brown dress, and she gave it a bit of a hitch. The roast beef was presently wheeled in on a sort of large, ancient perambulator. It reposed there under a kind of silver shed. This had not been used for 30 years or so, and had gone rather brassy at the edges. The wheeler in was Alphonse, complete with white hat, white choker, a gravy spoon, and a carving knife 2 inches wide. His 2 large, 2 handsome eyes darted rapidly about the room like jets, catching Iris Snow in the act of doing a hitch. This he interpreted as a sign of secret recognition, and he turned up the spirit flame that sprang out of the bowels of the perambulator to keep the beef warm. Presently Alphonse was carving roast beef with pride. Every red slice came off with a lofty, dandyish flourish. The pudding à la Yorkshire was helped to the plate with a touch of almost reverent extravagance. Typical Froggy, Pa thought. Ma was given the first helping, Alphonse standing over her in suspended bow to ask, in French, if Madame would taste and pronounce judgment on the pudding, please. Mademoiselle Dupont translated this request with bilingual flutterings, and Ma took a good mouthful of Yorkshire. Everyone waited in silence while she slipped it down. Wasn't half as good as she knocked up herself of a Sunday morning, she decided, but wasn't bad really, and she said, in strong English accent, "Très bon. Very nice indeed. Très bon, yeah, nice." Ma speared a second piece of Yorkshire on the end of her fork and held it across the table to Pop. Pop, who was feeling in the mood to praise anything, even saucisson à la mode d'ici, tasted it with a loud elastic smack of his lips. A moment later, searching for a word to describe what Alphonse had created, he was fired by a happy inspiration, remembering a word the Brigadier had once used in his hearing.
Delectable, he said. Absolutely delectable. Hot stuff. Formidable.
As if at a signal, Alphonse started to leap up and down spontaneously, brandishing the carving knife, and at the same time darting flaming glances at Iris Snow, who twitched her bosom again in reply. A sudden thrill went through her. It was all a dream. In imagination, she suddenly saw herself being pursued by Alphonse over miles of Breton heather towards the sea, finally hiding herself from the darkly penetrating pursuing eyes in some far distant allée couvert among secret tumuli.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen,
Alphonse said. He had learned these few words of English off by heart from the second cook who had once worked in Whitechapel.
Blast and dem, merci madame et messieurs, blast and dem, thank you, vive l'anglaise, vive la Yorkshire.
At this, he suddenly took off his tall chef's hat, raised it, bowed politely, and backed out of the dining room, giving a final dark undressing glance at Iris Snow, who was trying hard to conceal her emotion by hastily sliding Yorkshire pudding into her mouth. She had to admit to herself that she had tasted nothing like the rich red beef and its delicious melting pudding for years. Rich food, even more than the unaccustomed punch, the port, the white wine, and the Chambol Musinier that accompanied the beef, was now having an unprecedented effect on her. Its stimulus was so marked where she might least have expected it. She was beginning to feel queer thumpings in the bosom, with sudden longings for air. Her head, on the other hand, seemed quite light and clear. Her mind retained all its sane, rippling, canary-like quality. It was past 11 o'clock when Alphonse arrived back from the kitchen to make the business of the crepe Suzette a sacrifice of joy. That was the best part of the evening, Ma thought. So did the children, who sprang out of their chairs every time a pan of golden flame went up and shrieked that it was just like fireworks. "Ought to have the lights out," Ma suggested. "It'll look very pretty." When the lights were put out, the flares of the flaming liqueurs danced about the darkened dining room. The bright, leaping light gave to the front of Angela Snow's skin-tight dress a remarkable effect of transformation. Her body looked no longer blue, but silver, and it would have been almost too much for Mademoiselle Dupont-de-Bear if Pop, who was sitting next to her, hadn't thought it as good a moment as any to caress her thigh. From that moment she never knew whether it was the fourth bottle of Chambol Musinier they were drinking, or the fifth, or what it was. In contrast to Iris Snow, she had begun to feel quite light-headed, and there was still champagne to come. It came at 12 o'clock, together with the cake that Alphonse had made. Alphonse, more buttery-eyed than ever, bore the cake in himself and set it down with pride and a flourish before Mariette and Charlie. The cake was iced in bright, soapy pink, with a single large red candle on it, and on top of it were the words imprinted circular-wise in red, "Happy Birthday, Anniversaire, and Good Luck." Then everyone toasted Mariette and Charlie in champagne. Even Monsieur Mollet had crept out of hiding again to take part in the toasting, staring with filmy eyes at the blue vision of Angela Snow that had troubled him so much and so increasingly ever since he had first seen it at 8 o'clock. All through the toasting, Pop stood with paternal pride watching Mariette. No doubt about it, she was sumptuous, even more beautiful, he thought, than Ma had once been. Charlie boy was lucky all right, and Pop could only hope that he would, in the shortest possible time, show his appreciation of the fact in the right and proper way. Pop couldn't help thinking, too, of the day, perhaps not all that far ahead, when Primrose, Victoria, and the twins would begin to develop on those same impressive, luscious lines. As if in answer to his thoughts, as the hotel's old brassy gramophone started playing for dancing, he heard a soft voice say, "Wouldn't you dance with me, Pop? I'd love to have the first dance with you." It was Primrose. She had, Pop thought, put just the faintest touch of lipstick on and had crimped her dark hair down over her forehead in a curious little fringe in the way the French girls did. Of course he would dance, he told her, and she at once held up her slim, sun-brown arms. "Thought you wouldn't ask me," she said, as he swung her away to the tune of an old favourite, La Vie en Rose. Pop said that it hadn't struck him that he'd been expected to ask his own daughter to dance. "It just shows you how much you know," Primrose complained.
"Oh, what about?"
Pop asked her. "Women." It was some seconds before Pop recovered from this withering blow. When he finally did so, he suddenly thought it diplomatic to sidestep a second one, in case one should be coming, by neatly changing the subject with a ripple of laughter.
"Well, home tomorrow. Home, sweet home."
Primrose, unsmiling, looked him in the face, her dark, soft eyes full of sad disapproval. "Why do you have to sound so glad about it?"
"Glad?"
Pop said. "Glad? Well, why not? It was nice to go on holiday, but it was nicer still to go home. Everybody said so." "Everybody?" she said. "Who's everybody? What do they know?"
"Well, don't you want to go home?"
he said. "No, Pop," she said. "I didn't sleep a wink all last night for thinking about it, nor the night before, nor the night before that." Pop, in his airy way, said, for crying out gently, whatever was it that had done that to her? "Pop," she said, and again she looked up at him, this time no longer with sadness, but with a glance so swift that it swung away again before he could catch it, leaving him looking down at nothing but the dark oval of her hair. She had very pretty hair, and it curled fluffily in the nape of her neck, just like Ma's did. "I want to ask you something."
"Ask on. Fire away."
Money, he supposed. "Pop," she said, "do I have to go home?" Didn't mean to tell him she wanted to stay here, in France, did she? Pop said. "All on her lonesome? All by herself?" "Not by myself," she said. "I wouldn't be alone." Wouldn't be much fun in the hotel, he reminded her. The season was practically over. "No, I'll have someone to stay with," she said. Before answering, Pop permitted himself the luxury of humming a few bars of La Vie en Rose. Very good song, La Vie en Rose. Good thing Mademoiselle Dupont had fished out some of her old favourites. They got you.
"Oh, who's you?"
"My boyfriend." For once, unsurprised, Pop was back as quick as a bird, laughing.
"Thought you had two," he said.
Pained dark eyes held him for a sharp second or two. "I've given one up," she said. I had to make the decision."
"Oh, well, what's this one's name?"
"Marc Antoine."
Typical Froggy, Pop thought. Very fancy. And how old is he?
"Is he older than me? He's 12.
Pop said heavily,
quite unlike himself.
Second later, he found himself looking down at her, but
She at once looked away. "He said I can go and live with him," she said.
"Oh?"
Pop said. He spoke faintly. Good grief, bit early, wasn't it? He knew from experience that Ma had been well forward and all that for her age, but damn it, after all, there were limits. "With his parents. His father keeps a confectioner's shop, a patisserie. I could. Oh, please, Pop." Suddenly he couldn't help thinking that the voice was uncannily, disturbingly like that of the loveliest and most insinuating of all his daughters, Mariette. "Please, Pop, couldn't I, please, please." Pop, giving what he thought was a sagacious wag of the head, a gesture meant to be taken seriously, said simply,
"You better ask your ma."
"I asked her. She said I was to ask you."
Cornered, Pop took refuge in a few further light bars of La Vie en Rose, but he knew that lark couldn't go on much longer. There was a crisis about somewhere. "This, wants thinking about," he told her. He made an effort to sum up the kernel of the matter in a single phrase, and came out with half a dozen words of brave simplicity that struck even him as being not quite what was wanted. "Long way from home, you know." She withered him with a glance both needle-like and wretched. "You'd like to part us, I expect." "Well, Don't you ever hear that bit Charlie's always quoting?" she said. "It's his favourite bit. Love is not love that alters when it alteration finds." Pop was silent. That fella Keats again. Charlie boy all over. He had to hand it to Charlie. Terrific influence on the family that chap had been, no doubt about it.
He was profoundly wishing he knew a bit more about psychology, if not Keats, when a cheerful, languid voice hailed him and said, "Why the dark, deep, furrowed brow, dear boy? The crepe Suzette not settling or what? Or shouldn't a girl ask? Cheer up, chum." It was Angela Snow dancing past him with Montgomery, and Pop was restored to his perky, normal self again. "Oh, only Juliet here," he said, stroking Primrose's soft, dark hair. Damn it, he wasn't sure he wasn't very nearly quoting Keats or Shakespeare or somebody himself now. "Wants to stay in France with Romeo." "And rightly so," Angela Snow said. "Got the right idea. You're going to let her, of course, aren't you? I'll kick you if you don't." "Course," Pop said. "Course. Got to start sometime." "Sensible man," she said. "Anyway, I'll be here for a while yet. I'll do the chaperone." Unstartled by a word only vaguely familiar to him, Pop watched the willowy vision float away and then found himself a moment later looking down at a pair of dark eyes brimming over, as he had feared they would be, with tears, except that they were now clear, bright tears of joy. "Oh, Pop," was all Primrose could say. "Oh, Pop, Marc Antoine will be thrilled." French blood in the family now, Pop thought. Blimey, what next? "It's just like the Sugar Plum Fairy," Primrose said softly, and her olive lids quite closed. "I never imagined—" "Uh-oh," Pop said. "Tchaikovsky." She was light-headed, Pop thought. Must be. Did that to you when you were young. He now hadn't the vaguest idea what his daughter, with eyes still closed, was talking about, and decided it could only be another of them larks they learnt you nowadays at school. As if sensing his thoughts, she said, "It's about the little girl who goes to bed after a Christmas party and can't sleep and then comes downstairs and watches the Sugar Plum Fairy dance and all that, just like this. Haven't you ever heard it before?" Pop had to confess he hadn't. Nevertheless, he was fascinated, as always, by the hint of an excursion into new worlds, and asked her what else they learnt them nowadays at school. "Oh, biology," she said, "sex and all that." For crying out gently, he thought. No wonder Ma had said she was developing early. It didn't surprise him, considering the help they got. Again, for the second or third time, he didn't know what to say and was saved the necessity of attempting any comment by another airy remark from Primrose, delivered this time with dark eyes fully open, roundly staring up at him, beautifully glistening. "They don't teach them sex in French schools, though," she said. "Oh? Oh, don't they? Well, too bad." How did she know? "Because I asked Marc Antoine," she said. "He was awfully surprised we had it." Didn't wonder at it, Pop thought. Anyway, he was very interested, and that's how we started to get to know each other better. Ma would certainly have to hear all about this lark, Pop was thinking. At the same time, he was wondering if another glass of champagne wouldn't do him all the good in the world when the music stopped. In the short ensuing silence, he saw Ma talking to one of the French chambermaids. He guessed little Oscar was awake and was quite certain of it a moment later when he heard Ma say that she'd be up in a minute to soothe him down, and that if punch, white wine, red wine, champagne and crepe Suzette wouldn't do the trick, nothing would. With an involuntary rush of paternal affection, he gently patted Primrose on the head. Her voice, low with emotion, thanked him with a few happy whispered syllables for the dance and everything. He stood without a coherent thought he could offer in answer, trying hazily to disentangle all that stuff about Sugar Plum Fairies, Tchaikovsky, sex, biology, and what they learn at school nowadays, so bemused that he probably wouldn't have heard the next record, which was that old favourite Night and Day, if it hadn't been that a curious thing occurred. As Iris Snow heard the opening bars, something suspiciously like a sob sprang from her throat. A moment later, she hastily pressed a tiny lace handkerchief to her mouth and rushed from the room. By 1 o'clock, Pop had danced, once each, with Mariette, Ma, Angela Snow, and was now having a waltz with Mademoiselle Dupont, who was in excited mood. While she danced, she kept breathing harder and harder, and as the dance went on, she threw back her head, laughing freely, and said she felt like singing. Rather to Pop's surprise, she actually burst into a few bars of song. Her voice came out as a rather pleasant contralto. Pop then said jovially that he felt like having a bit of a warble himself, and on the spur of the moment they sang C'est si bon, she singing the French and he, in a light falsetto, what he could remember of the English words. Soon everyone else was singing too, and the bright noise was punctuated by the cracking volley of champagne corks. Iris Snow could hear them as she stood on the terrace outside talking to Alphonse, in French, under the plane trees. Every moment she felt more than ever like a wild canary. She'd never had so much drink in her life, and in rapid sentences she was telling Alphonse how much she adored his country. France was her Mecca. Everything about France was so cultured. There was nowhere in the world like France. She adored it, its people, its art, its manners, its wine, and its food. From a woman who fed largely on soft-boiled eggs, dry toast, and anchovy paste, this was said with a remarkable degree of passion. And in the lights of the hotel windows, Alphonse besotted her with the remorseless charm of his handsome eyes that were now so like big, shining prunes. Soon she was aware again of a transcendent rushing thrill, that strange, unsteady thumping in her bosom, and the panting desire for air. She longed to rush to the beach, she said. A few moments later, Alphonse guided her unsteadily to the plage, where she found it much easier to sit down than stand up, and where she suddenly found herself remarking recklessly, and for no reason at all, in a voice that seemed not to belong to her, that the night was just like Grecian honey. It was all like new warm honey from the south, she said, and she longed to rush into the sea. A moment later she started to take off her shoes and stockings, going about it so ineptly that Alphonse started to give her help with the suspenders. With a shriek of joy she dashed across the beach to the sea. The little pleated phosphorescent waves were just like milk, she thought, and over in the western sky a great star, oh no, a planet, she supposed, was hanging like burnt gold above the sea. Oh, so like a wonderful, great big gingerbread. She called out crazily with all the gilt still on. Alphonse, who hadn't the vaguest idea what she was talking about, pursued her to the edge of the water. By the time he reached it, she was already paddling ecstatically westwards up to her knees. With the water rising up her legs, she suddenly decided to tuck her frock in her knickers, which were the same shade of dull coffee brown as the dress. Seeing this, Alphonse started to take off his shoes and stockings too, and roll up the legs of his blue and white striped chef's trousers, which Iris adored. At this point the sea was shallow for half a mile from the shore, and Iris was still only up to her knees, 30 yards out, when Alphonse caught up with her. He at once embraced her passionately round the lower middle and started kissing her madly on one ear. In the middle of this, she felt her knees buckle underneath her. In a moment she was up to her armpits, kneeling on sand. Alphonse went under too, and in this uncomfortable position, still crying out that the night was like honey and the stars like gilded gingerbread, Iris Snow surrendered gladly to whatever was coming, with low sobs of joy. Back in the hotel, Mademoiselle Dupont was inviting Pop into the bureau. There was something of importance she wished to say. With shining eyes, she asked him to accept a small green leather box from her. Small thing, little parting gift for you. Opening the box, Pop found inside it a pair of silver cufflinks reposing on a bed of emerald velvet. Please, to look, there is something. Pop took the cufflinks out and, looking more closely, found that Mademoiselle Dupont had had his initials engraved on the faces of the links in the form of a monogram. "Oh, it's very nice," he said. "Oh, absolutely perfect." So, just a small thing, just... Wonderful, wonderful. Very chic, he went on, and said he didn't know how to thank her. Trey's snob, Mademoiselle Dupont, without saying so, very much hoped he would thank her by kissing her, and in fact he did. The kiss was of a kind she'd never experienced before, and probably never would do again. Under the long, extremely well-directed pressure, she several times thought the new corset would give way. When it was all over, she stood looking up at him with unsteady, luminous eyes, holding his face in her hands. "Tomorrow you will be back in England," she said. "Tell me about your house in England, your chateau." "Oh, it was perfect," Pop said. "Paradise. You wouldn't find anything more perfect in the world nowhere," he told her, and then warmed to the business of describing how the junkyard was in spring, with cuckoos calling, nightingales going glorious hell for leather night and day, in the bluebell wood, water lilies gold and white in the stream, fields glowing with strawberries, meadows rich with buttercups and grasses, and all the rest of the marvellous, mad, midsummer lark in England. For some time she listened to all this, as she might have listened to some sort of celestial revelation, and then decided to ask a question. "And will you perhaps marry one day?" Pop patted her playfully on the roundest part of the corset with an especially warm, affectionate hand, and laughed loudly. Mademoiselle Dupont had never known hands so warm. "Well, shall, if somebody asks me." "Someone will," she told him with transfixed, shining eyes. "I'm sure that someone will." Better give her the other off, Pop thought, and set the seal on the evening. The gift and her complete and luminous joy by repeating the kiss at even greater length, even under greater pressure. "I've decided to reconstruct the hotel," she said. "To have an ascenseur and water, hot and cold in the bedrooms, and it was you who gave me such ideas." "That was the spirit," Pop said. "Tray snob, pull 'em down, start afresh. He wouldn't mind putting a bit of money into it himself, if it could be wangled." "We could be partners," she said. "Well, could be. "It is always you," she said, "who has such wonderful ideas. Before you came to stay here, I had no courage for such changes." "Courage my foot," Pop said, and gave the corset a final semi-stroking amorous pat in the roundest part. "Natural. If you want an apple off the tree, go and get the damn thing." Still pondering on this remark, Mademoiselle Dupont went back with Pop into the dining room, where everyone except Angela Snow and Monsieur Mollet was still dancing. Angela Snow watched her come into the room, holding Pop in a kind of aerial embrace. For a few seconds she experienced an amazing impulse to rush over and smack Mademoiselle Dupont's face. While she was trying to resist it, she suddenly found herself being asked to dance by Monsieur Mollet. Monsieur Mollet had wanted to ask her to dance all evening, but had lacked the courage. Now, shy and flushed, pince-nez sparkling, he began dancing with her in a way she hadn't experienced before. He held her consistently at arm's length, as if afraid of letting the front of his body touch the long, sheath-like curves of her. He was several inches shorter than she was, which meant that he was constantly forced to gaze up at her. This way she found herself concentrating on his eyes. Behind the glasses, the pupils were a peculiar mid-shade of brown, like partly roasted coffee beans. They were sad, mute, appealingly funny little eyes. And, well, she liked them. After a speechless 5 minutes, she suddenly felt a dreamy and extraordinary impulse to kiss Monsieur Mollet bang in the centre of his forehead. Fortunately, the music stopped a moment later. And a damn good thing, too, she thought. If you'd have kissed him, the poor dear would have dropped down dead. Don't be so lethal. Meanwhile, on the far side of the room, in the electric light, the delicate little prisms of Mars' Diamante comb flashed with many colours as Pop paused to joke with her. "It's time you had another dance with Angela," she told him. "Fair's fair." It was nearly 4 o'clock, Pop reminded her. He wanted to sit down with a quiet glass of champagne somewhere. Even he was getting tired. "Do as I say," Ma said. "Have one more dance with her and then get to bed." Pop threw back his head and laughed uproariously. "Ma," he said, "I think you'd better say that sentence in some other way, hadn't you?" A moment later, Pop found himself dancing with the same languid, casual, flippant vision who had long since endeared herself to him as a sporting kindred spirit. She, as if unable to recover from Monsieur Mollet's technique of dancing at arm's length, let Pop hold her in that way too, looking straight into his happy, perky eyes and giving him a sporting wink or two. Well? Well? Pop said. Whale of a party? She laid her lovely head on his shoulder. This I wouldn't have missed for all the world, she said. For all the world, my sweet, for all the world, I wouldn't have missed it. It's been absolutely perfect. Impulsively, she kissed him as she had wanted to kiss Monsieur Mollet in the centre of the forehead, and an astonished Pop almost recoiled from a display of a technique with which he had been totally unacquainted before. Half an hour later, the party was over. Nobody in the hotel was awake except Monsieur Mollet, who'd been so shattered by the evening's experience that he was busy taking an aspirin, and Mademoiselle Dupont, who lay full length on her bed in darkness, still in her corset, thinking over and over again of how she would reshape the hotel, putting in ascenseur and hot and cold water in all the bedrooms, and how perhaps she might have a partner, and also of the fogless splendours of an England astonishingly revealed as abounding in strawberries, cuckoos, water lilies, nightingales, and pudding à la Yorkshire. Outside the hotel, nobody was awake either, except Iris Snow, who was walking slowly up and down the plage, watching the setting planet that was so like a gingerbread with all the gilt still on, trying to find a pair of lost stockings and singing a happy song. The Rolls stood outside the Beau Rivage at 1:30 the next afternoon. Only two people, besides Mademoiselle Dupont and Monsieur Mollet, stood on the terrace under the plane trees to wave goodbye. Primrose and Marc Antoine stood solemnly holding large pink and chocolate ice creams in bright saffron-coloured cornets, giving the tops of them occasional licks with bright pink tongues. After Pop had been struck once again by the dubious prospect of having French blood in the family, he couldn't help noticing that Marc Antoine, who was the colour of suet and wore large, shining steel-rimmed spectacles, looked remarkably like a younger, smaller, froggier Mr. Charlton. Funny how his daughters attracted the type. When everything was finally packed and everyone was in the car, Ma, quite imperial in the back with little Oscar in her arms, Pop went up to the steps of the hotel and under the astonished eyes of Monsieur Mollet gave Mademoiselle Dupont a prolonged parting sample of amorous affection that even had the children cheering from the car. Au revoir, Pop said. Goodbye, mademoiselle, and at last retreated from her dazed figure with several debonair waves of the hand. À bientôt, au revoir, merci, so long, goodbye, adieu. Goodbye, au revoir, everyone called back. Au revoir, adieu, goodbye, chipped in Primrose and Marc Antoine. When Pop got back into the Rolls, even Ma had to confess she was surprised at the length and generosity of Pop's farewell to Mademoiselle Dupont. You wouldn't be if you'd seen the bill. Damn it, might as well have me money's worth. The bill was a blinder. He doubted very much if he'd ever get over the bill. Percentages for this, taxes for that, services for the other, breathing charges. He doubted if even Charlie, that master of figures, would ever be able to sort out all the dodgy squeezes in that bill. It had very nearly skinned him out. He told Ma, very nearly skinned him out. Might have to pawn the Rolls, he said serenely. Still, he thought a moment later, it was all over. It was well worth it. And he gave a final chorus of contrapuntal toots of the horn in farewell as the Rolls moved away. As soon as the Rolls was out of sight and Pop's cheerful tooting had died away, Mademoiselle Dupont rushed back into the hotel, determined that no one else detect the tears in her eyes. She lay for the rest of the afternoon on her bed, weepily seeing over and over again the pictures Pop had painted for her of his home, his chateau, the lordly paradise in England. Never again would she say that the English were frigid and reticent or restrained, or that they took their pleasures sadly, or that fog perpetually covered their land. She knew it to be otherwise. Meanwhile, as the Rolls drove along the coast, Ma called Pop through the speaking tube. I don't know what you did to Mademoiselle Dupont last night, but you've got her in a proper tizzy. Nothing, Pop said airily. Nothing. Not a thing. Did you ask her to marry you? Pop said he'd rather thought that he had. Hadn't he ought to have done? Ma wasn't offended. Oh, it's not that, Ma said, and started laughing in her customary hearty fashion. I was only thinking I hope she don't have to wait as long as I have. Pop burst out laughing too. That was one of Ma's good ones. Well, Bill or no Bill, it had been a pretty good holiday. Done everybody a whale of good, he thought, especially Mariette and Charlie, who both looked in the pink. He'd expect results now. I expect you asked Angela too, didn't you? Ma said down the tube. Yeah, well, shouldn't wonder, Pop said. Ma said she wasn't worried about Angela. She could take care of herself. But she didn't want Pop going round putting people in a tizzy and breaking their hearts. You've got to draw the line somewhere. Pop agreed, but still, you know, when you were in Rome. Oh, talking about Rome, there's another thing, Ma said. Have you thought any more about little Oscar's names? Pop was quick to confess he hadn't. Well, I know you've been busy, but we can't let the poor little mite go about all his life with only one name, now can we, Ma said? That would be a nice thing, wouldn't it? Terrible, Pop said. Well, I've been thinking a lot about it. Are you listening? Yes, Pop told her on the tube he was listening. Well, Ma said, I'll tell you what. Oh, a minute. We want something good, something special, no half-lark, something a bit tray snob. I know that, Ma said. Anyway, I thought what I'd like to call him. Oh? What? I thought we'd call him Oscar Livingstone David Larkin. Pop was silent for some moments. All his strong paternal instincts came steeply, warmly to the surface as he contemplated the proposed trio of names for his son. The names had got to be right, he thought again. No half-larks. Almost immediately he had a qualm about it and called back to Ma down the tube. No, Ma, no, won't do, none of 'em, can't have 'em. Oh? Ma said, why not? Well, makes his initials OLD, Pop said. He'll be called Old Larkin all his life. Can't have that. Ma agreed. They couldn't possibly have that. And before she could think of anything else to say, Pop called her again. What was that about Rome, Ma? Didn't you say once you wanted to call him after some Roman emperor? Yeah, I didn't know, Ma said. But I'm blowed if I can remember which one it was. Tiberius, I think. Back in a flash of scolding breath came Charlie. Not on your life, not that one. Why not, Ma said. You'd hardly want to call him after a judicial murderer. Charlie at it again, Pop thought, in silent admiration. Amazing fella. I should think not, Ma said. He's got a lovely nature, this boy. Wasn't there one called Octavius, though? You can't possibly call him Octavius, Charlie said. He's the 7th, not the 8th. Who is? Oscar. Call him Septimus, if you want a Roman name. Septimus? Ma said, why Septimus? Septimus, the 7th. Sept, the same as in French, the same as September, the 7th month. Mariette said quickly, September isn't the 7th month, lovey. It's the 9th. Back came Charlie. Ah, but it used to be, darling, before the calendar was changed. Just as November used to be the 9th and December the 10th. Pop was stunned again to silent admiration. Wonderfully clever fella, Charlie. Terrific clever fella. I think Septimus sounds rather nice, said Ma, kissing Oscar on the ear. Suits his nature. You like it, Pop? He did, Pop said. It had that rather tray snob touch about it. What Charlie sometimes called je ne sais quoi. Not too difficult, Ma said. After all, we want to give him names people can say. Pop treated this remark with a short, soft laugh of scorn. What was the name of that kid at the post office, he wanted to know? Horser or something, wasn't it? Septimus was no worse than that. Who was Horser, anyway? Saxon king, Charlie said blandly, had a brother named Hengist. Altogether too taken aback to speak, Pop could only silently congratulate Ma on the swiftness with which she once again made one of her nippy changes of subject. What was the name of that explorer? She asked. Who? Shackleton? No, before him, Ma said, foreigner. It was Charlie who, as so often before, came to the rescue. Columbus? Columbus, Ma said. Of course it was.
Oscar Columbus Septimus.
Pop repeated several times over and over again.
That's got class. Oscar Columbus Septimus, Ma. I like that.
Ma said she liked it too, and they should settle on Oscar Columbus Septimus David then. Oh, no, not David, Mariette said. I hate David. How about Dupont? Ma said. Oscar Columbus Septimus Dupont Larkin. Well, it tickled him to death, Pop said. Dupont. Just the job. Perfect. Absolutely tickled him to death. Tray snob. Well, that's that then, Ma said calmly. If we can't have a wedding when we get home, at least we can have a christening, can't we? Fair enough?
Fair enough. Here's an excuse for a party.
And I'll tell you something else I just thought of.
Oh, what was that?
I thought we'd ask Mademoiselle Dupont to be godmother, sort of bring her into the family. The thought of little Oscar having a French godmother set Pop slapping his knees and roaring with laughter. Joyful noises gurgled down the speaking tube, and the sound of the Rolls's contrapuntal horns rang royally across the rocky slopes of heather, somewhere among which Charlie's beloved little train, symbol of travel long ago, seemed to let out a toot in reply.
Godmother Dupont, Pop said. Well, I'll go to the bone house. I'll go to the ossuary.
Which, Ma told him down the tube, is just about where you'll end up one of these fine days. And then, with a sigh, she settled serenely back on the Rolls's deep dove-grey cushions, a wide, handsome spread of maternal bosom exposed, ready to give Oscar Columbus Septimus Dupont Larkin a little drop of the best.